My entitled coworker keeps stealing my construction tools and then keeps losing them in places where I literally cannot find them. But the straw that broke my back was when this guy literally took my stuff without asking, forcing me to retaliate in a way that truly pissed off just about everybody around me. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk and also click the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. I'm a 35-year-old carpenter and I've got about 12 years of experience in the trade. I work on a small framing crew of about 5 guys for a residential builder, and I take a lot of pride in my work. Plus, I've invested thousands of dollars into my own tools. I have almost anything I would need to get through any task on site. Well, about a month ago, we got a new guy who I will call Kyle for the sake of the story, who is about 22 years old. Now, Kyle is green, which is totally fine, but he's also one of those guys who shows up with a cheap hammer and a tape measure and expects to be able to use everybody else's stuff as well. Now, it really started small. He would say stuff like, "Hey man, can I borrow your speed square? Hey, can I grab your impact driver for a second?" And at first, I was nice about it. I would say to him, "Sure, just bring it right back when you're done." But guess what? He never did. I would find my impact driver on the other side of the house, with a dead battery, mind you, or I'd find my good chisels left on a muddy sill plate. I've talked to him, I've talked to our foreman, and the foreman just says, "Oh, he's just a kid, help him out. We're a team after all." But the company doesn't replace my tools when they get broken or lost. But seriously, yesterday was the last straw. I was on a ladder and I see Kyle walk up to the pack out, unzip my personal tool bag, and take my cordless multi-tool. And no, he didn't ask. He literally just took it. So I came down the ladder, I walked over to him, and I took it right out of his hand. I said, "You're done. You need to either get your own or use the company tools." He then started to argue, and so I saw red. I unplugged my battery chargers, I started packing all my cordless gear, and I put my hand tools back in my truck. The foreman came running over, asking what in the world I was doing, and I told him that I'm happy to work with the tools the company provides, but my personal tools are now off limits to everybody, especially Kyle. Now, this is where I might be the jerk, because Kyle was in the middle of cutting a vent, and he needed my multi-tool to finish it, and we had no other multi-tool on site. So my refusal meant that we had to stop, and the foreman had to drive 40 minutes back to the shop to get one, putting all of us behind our work. And then the whole crew was pissed off at me because we had to stay an hour late just to finish up. And now Kyle is calling me an old jerk, and my foreman told me that I need to be a team player, and that I can't just shut down the job over a tool. And I've got to be honest, it really feels like I'm taking crazy pills. I'm just protecting my own property that I paid for. So truly, did I overreact by holding my ground, even though it made everybody else stay late? Because right now I'm honestly so frustrated that I just don't know what to do. No, there's no way you're at fault here. This is crazy. Why on earth does Kyle get a free pass on losing your crap? And why should you be responsible for putting up with that? That literally doesn't make any sense to me. Like, that is so stupid. And the fact that your foreman and your boss and pretty much everybody you work with, they're all trying to be like, "Wow, why did you do this?" Like, dude, they've got it completely backwards. They should be screaming at Kyle and be like, "Dude, why can't you get your own crap?" So no, you didn't overreact. I think you did the right thing by standing your ground and saying, "No, I'm not going to give up my stuff just for this guy to lose it." Because at the end of the day, that is specifically unfair to you, and you do not deserve to deal with that in the slightest.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
Am I the jerk for taking the train without my friend, all because she was late to the station? Because right now, I'm not sure if I made a mistake. Here's what happened. Okay, so the other day, I was on a trip to London for college, and I had to make my own way there. So I agreed with 2 of my friends in the same class that we would go together. We had to get 1 train and 2 tubes there, and this was the route our teacher advised us to get. Well, the night before, I checked the times for the first train, and there was only one at 8:15 in the morning. So I told my friends to arrive at 8 o'clock, which they all said was fine. The morning of the trip, I was up early, and so was my friend, who I will call Erin. In fact, she was messaging me at 6 o'clock in the morning to double check the train time, make sure we had everything we needed for the trip, etc. I walked to the train station and got there at about 8 o'clock, and on my walk, both my friends were messaging me, asking if I was on my way. Erin was on her way too, and my other friend, who I will call Brittany, had been there since about 7:45. When I got to the train station, only Brittany was there, and we waited a bit for Erin, who said that she was close, but after a few good minutes, she still had not arrived. So I sent her a message, telling her to meet us on the platform. We go to the platform and the train was coming in a few minutes. And at this point, we were both starting to panic as Erin wasn't here yet. She finally messaged us that she was at the station, but apparently she had no money on her travel card and needed to top it up. Well, as she was doing that, our train arrived. And I told her we were going to be getting on it, but she begged us to wait. The next train wasn't for like a half an hour, and we would be 100% late, especially because it was rush hour. Now, Brittany was feeling bad about going without her, so I suggested that she can wait for Erin while I get on the train, but she was nervous about traveling traveling alone, so we got on together. I told Erin that we had got on the train, and I explained to her that we're sorry, but we really want to be on time, and she will just have to get the next train. Well, when I said that, she was really upset, and I felt bad, but it wasn't my fault that she was late. Brittany and I were both on time, and just as I mentioned before, Erin was up early in the morning, so unless some problem happened that she didn't tell me about, then she left way too late. She told me that she had found a quicker route that she would use, but then shortly afterwards, told me that she wouldn't come on the trip because she felt worried about traveling alone and didn't want to get lost, which by the way is completely fair. I feel awful that she had to miss the trip, but both me and Brittany hate being late, and I think that what she did is a bit disrespectful. She's also late to school or just barely on time a lot as it is, so this really isn't like a one-off situation. But regardless, am I the jerk for not waiting for her and also being late in the process? Because right now I'm not sure if I made a mistake. Okay, dude, there's no way you're the jerk here. Like, come on. Your friend knew exactly what time they had to be here. They woke up early and they messaged you specifically about this, and then they're gonna try and guilt trip you all because you want to be on time? Like, seriously, that's super entitled. Plus, on top of that, this is not some isolated incident. If it was one of those situations where it's like, oh, it's a freak accident and she's always on time, then sure, maybe wait for her and like go as a group. But she literally did this to herself, even though she knew what time she was supposed to leave. And I don't know about you, but I really hate people who act like this, where they literally try to like derail pretty much everything going on all because they made a mistake. Like, that is simply not fair for you or the person you're traveling with. So just because she's late doesn't mean that you have to also be late as well. So no, I don't think the original poster is the jerk, and I think I absolutely would have done the same thing, because personally I hate being late, but especially when it's due to someone else's lack of planning. Am I the jerk for not letting my friend work from my home after he took advantage of pretty much my entire setup? Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, I'm a female and I'm in my 30s, and my guy friend is also around the same age. We are located in Jamaica, and because of the recent hurricane, our community has no electricity. I work remotely, so I invested in a solar system due to the electrical issues, and I did this before the hurricane. Well, my friend also works remotely, but is unable to do so because there is no electricity. And while he does have a generator, he thought it would be better and cheaper just to work from my home. I advised him that I can't accommodate him long term as my home isn't large and I'm a single mother, and he said that was fine. Well, the first day when he came over, he was drinking our water, and I told him, look, you need to bring your own water. Water is literally short right now. But then he used the toilet without flushing, and it's here that I pointed to the bucket that's right next to the toilet that's used to flush the toilet. And yes, as you're probably already gathering up, we have no running water because of the hurricane. The next day, it was overcast and the panels were not pulling as much power, which is something I definitely told him. But instead of listening, he proceeded to charge all of his devices and then use the microwave. But even still, I chose not to complain. Well, today I realized the meat in my freezer was soft, all because he unplugged it to plug in all of his devices, and my food literally could have been ruined. I didn't curse or say anything rude, and I didn't even shout, but instead I advised him that Friday is the last day. He simply cannot come back here to work. He was then on the phone telling someone he doesn't know what he's gonna do, and now lately he's been sulking and hardly talking to me. So seriously, am I the jerk for basically kicking him to the curb? Because right now I'm not sure if I made a mistake. Okay, honestly, your friend is just taking advantage of you. I'm sorry, there's no other way to put this. They not only almost like ruined your food, but they also did it in a way that was just completely toxic. Like, holy crap, they unplugged the freezer? Are you kidding me right now? He literally could have like ruined all your meat and all your food right then and there if you hadn't caught that. So no, I don't think you're the jerk for telling him to get lost and go somewhere else, because as far as I'm concerned, he was taking advantage of you, and that is absolutely not fair. My entitled mom won't stop messaging me and calling me, as she is constantly trying to keep tabs on me and figure out what I'm doing with my life. Because after I moved out literally overnight just to get away from them, she's still making a crazy effort to know exactly what I'm up to, putting me in a situation where honestly I don't know what to do. Here's what's happening. To start things out, I'm 30 years old, and I had to essentially run away from home this year to get away from my toxic parents. I packed in silence, I left when my parents weren't home, and I never told them where I was or with who. They know I'm alive and well because my mother keeps messaging me incessantly. My father barely sent 2 messages since I left, one of which was him dictating what I need to change about myself, and the other was a fake happy birthday wish for me. My mother keeps saying things like, oh, is everything okay? You haven't contacted me in a few days now. And she'll say it in a way that sounds like, oh, you're obligated to message me frequently, and if you don't, it's bad. The thing is, I cannot ignore her and just live my life. She's already gone behind my back to my best friend's house, pestered him and his entire family about where I was, broke down in tears and told them she's on sedatives because of me, and then my best friend had to tell her that I'm living with my boyfriend, whom she didn't even know existed, because because I had to protect my relationship from their chaos, and she kept pushing him to tell her exactly where I was, but he didn't cave. When I ignored her a bit more another time, she started pestering him again and messaging him about me. So I can't just ignore her. If I do, she pesters other people. Like, what am I supposed to do? Today, she messaged me the entire day. Then she called me, and then she sent my father to message me too. He just sent me a picture of their field trip saying, oh, greetings from where we're at, as if we were just completely normal and on speaking terms. Because honestly, this entire situation is super frustrating, and at this point, I just don't know what to do. Okay, first of all, you do not have to live like this because this is crazy. Like, seriously, your mom needs to get out of your business. Like, you're 30 years old, you're allowed to live by yourself and away from them, especially if they're going to be this controlling about your life. Like, holy crap. So I think for me, I would start telling everybody exactly what my parents are doing. I would explain to my friends that they will probably be contacted at some point in the near future, and that unfortunately there's nothing I can do about it, nor do I condone that behavior. Because from the sounds of it, your mom sounds incredibly crazy and just a little bit controlling. And based on what you're describing, I can pretty much see exactly why you decided to move out. An entitled tour guide at a museum literally shoves an elderly couple out of the way just so they can cut ahead in line. So I decided to get some petty revenge by quite literally ruining this tour guide's entire tour. Here's how I did it. Okay, so last year I was on vacation with the family, and our trip took us to a very well-appointed museum in Greece. There was, of course, a line to get in, and we took our place in line and waited patiently as the line moved forward. Notably, it was actually a fairly quick pace, since the staff were moving us along pretty well. Then the tour guide showed up, and trust me, I get it. Tour guides have their tours, and they get paid to get them in quickly so that the tour can proceed, and so they can keep their timeline. But this lady, well, she didn't just jump the line, she smashed right through it and was very rude to the sweet elderly couple ahead of us. And trust me, I get it. You've got a group of 20 people that you're buying entry tickets for, but there was absolutely no reason to shove ahead of them that way. There were a few raised eyebrows around us when it happened, but the staff of the museum didn't seem to care. We'd been in line behind that couple for maybe about 20 minutes or so, and they were truly like the nicest people from Canada we've ever met. It rubbed us all wrong the way the tour guide acted. So we were a couple minutes delayed getting in and decided to do a little bit of payback for the lady's rudeness because the couple that was shoved away were too polite to say anything back. Well, cue my extreme interest in whatever the tour guide was about to lead her group in to look at. I was there with at least one of my children alongside me, right in front of whatever it is she was trying to describe to her tour group. At some points, I had all three of my kids with me, and we formed practically a wall between her and whatever it is she was trying to describe to her tour group. My kids were very willing participants in this, with my wife staying well away. She knew what I was doing and wanted absolutely no part of it. One of my kids recently did a Greek history course at university, so she was able to expound in some detail on some of the palaces and 3 full exhibition halls, which essentially means that, yeah, we were basically in her way. We talked as loud as a tourist group should, blocking her view, talking over her, and discussing questions between each other that distracted her. By the second exhibition hall, I looked her square in the eye, I smiled, and continued chatting with my kids. She knew that I was doing it on purpose, and when she tried skipping ahead, she found 2 of my kids waiting for her in the next room already in the way. They were already talking and blocking, and then I caught up, and we repeated all the questions they'd already covered. Eventually, we decided to catch up with my wife, and after the 4th exhibition hall, we finally let it go, figuring that we had done more than enough. I had a great tour of the museum, my kids and I had a great time talking about Greek history, and we have since laughed together a couple of times when discussing the combined action of petty revenge. Because if anyone deserved it, this tour guide absolutely did. Yeah, I don't like it when people push around old people or children, like that really is upsetting. And the fact that this tour guide literally did that all because they're like, oh, I've got a tour, you need to get out of my way. Like that's crazy to me and there's no good excuse. So good for you for wasting her time and making her life just a little bit more miserable, because this lady's actions were incredibly toxic and she deserved to get shut down. Today, I witnessed a full-blown Karen meltdown at a spa today, as this Karen was convinced that her massage therapist was switched out for someone else, as this lady went off in a way that honestly was just not justifiable, and if anything, kind of ruined my session today at the spa. Here's what happened. Okay, so I just had the most surreal encounter this morning at a spa. I didn't film anything because I don't record people without consent, but honestly, I probably should have. So I arrived for a massage and I was sitting in the reception area. There were super calm vibes, there was soft music, there was Buddha statues, the whole peaceful setup. But then out of nowhere, this woman stormed in absolutely raging. From what I gather, she asked for a very specific masseuse, but during her session, she became convinced that they had secretly swapped the masseuse halfway through. She claimed something felt different and she demanded answers. But then this Karen says the classic line. She screams out, "I want to talk to a manager. Where is the manager?" And this is when it finally clicked. I was witnessing a real-life Karen in high definition. The staff were trying so hard to calm her down, but she refused to leave until the manager appeared. She just sat in the the lobby yelling at random moments. At one point, she even asked me if I'd been there before, and I low-key wanted to tell her that she was insufferable, but I didn't want to ruin my spa day even more. Plus, she did kind of seem crazy. But here's the best part. Because the staff denied her conspiracy about swapping massage therapists, she actually threatened to call the police so that they could check the cameras, and the staff couldn't help but laugh. Like seriously, surely the police have bigger fish to fry than a spa customer not getting the massage therapist that she wants. Also, there are no cameras in the massage rooms, obviously. They're literally only in the lobby. So what was she even talking about? I eventually went in for my massage, but for almost 40 minutes, we could still hear her shouting from all the way across the spa. It was certainly a spectacle, and she basically ruined pretty much everybody's session. Yeah, that's what I like to call someone who's probably going to get trespassed and then banned from that location. Who in their right mind would run around and be like, oh, I want to talk to a manager. You guys swap people out. I could feel the difference. But it's like, dude, you're about to feel the sidewalk as you walk back to your car. Like, what's going on right now? Because I'm right there with the original poster. Anytime some weirdo is freaking out in public and they're trying to get other people involved, you really do just want to give them a piece of your mind and be like, oh man, you really suck. But obviously you can't because, God, they might actually be crazy. Especially if they're getting mad over like these crazy conspiracy theories. Am I the jerk for returning my mother-in-law's borrowed necklace after she made some offhand comments that honestly just kind of rubbed me the wrong way? Because right now she's trying to claim that she's just embarrassed over this whole situation, even though I literally just want her to stop. Because right now this is getting weird and I'm just not sure what to do. Here's what's going on. To start things out, I'm a 32-year-old female and I borrowed a delicate vintage necklace from my mother-in-law, who I will call Evelyn for the sake of the story, and I did this for my niece's baptism last month. She said to take it and bring it back next week, and so I wore it, I loved it, and I returned it washed and in the box. Evelyn then looked at it and joked in front of the family by saying, "You made it look prettier than I do. Maybe you should keep it." And when she said this, I just kind of laughed it off, but later she kept making similar quips. She would say stuff like, "Well, if you like it, I'd rather it live with you." Well, at Thanksgiving, she started wearing a different necklace and said to my husband, "I don't really care about that other one." Well, 2 days later, I found it in my dresser under a pile of clothing. Evelyn had apparently left it behind during a visit and said that she would come back for it, but she never did. I then messaged her asking if she wanted it back, and she replied by saying, "No rush." I offered to bring it to her, but she declined. But it was here in the meantime that I found evidence that she had been joking with other family members about me taking her stuff. Well, when I found this out, I felt incredibly uncomfortable, and I took the necklace back to her house and left it on her table. With the necklace, I left a note that says, "It's yours. I returned it because you asked me to. Please don't joke about it." And apparently she was furious I embarrassed her by confronting the issue and accusing me of being possessive. So seriously, with all things considered, am I the jerk for returning the necklace and asking her to stop making these kind of comments? Because right now I'm honestly confused and I just don't know what to do. Okay, dude, I would not worry about this for a second. Evelyn sounds like a weirdo who just wants to have drama of some kind, and so she literally left that box with you so she could be like, "Oh wow, look at what the original poster did. They keep taking my stuff behind my back. I can't believe them." It's like, dude, get a life. You're so weird for that. So in my opinion, I think you did the right thing. I think calling her out, if not just in like a private manner through a note, I think is a really good way of getting it across that no, you definitely are not going to talk to me like that, but also I'm returning your stupid necklace, because it really seems like she's just trying to drama farm, and that is absolutely a waste of pretty much everybody's time. Am I the jerk for walking out of a family dinner after my wife told her family that I needed to apologize for embarrassing her? Because right now I'm still very pissed off and I just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so this blew up last night and I still feel like I'm losing my mind. So I went with my wife to her parents' house for a small family dinner. It was nothing fancy, just the usual Sunday thing, but the whole night she kept making these little comments about how I can't do anything right lately. It started as jokes, but then it turned into actual jabs. Her family just kind of laughed it off, and I stayed quiet because I didn't want drama at the table. Then once the desserts came out, her dad casually asked how our week was. My wife then says, "Well, it was fine except someone forgot to pick up the prescriptions again. But what else is new? He never listens." And yeah, she said this in front of everybody. I quietly said, "Well, I asked you to remind me because I was working late." She then rolled her eyes and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "See, he always has an excuse." When she said this, everyone went silent. I felt my ears burning. I just said to her, "I'm not doing this here," and then I stepped outside to cool down. When I came back in, the mood was tense. My wife pulled me aside and whispered that I had humiliated her by walking out and that I owed her and her parents an apology for making a scene. But I straight up told her I'm not going to apologize for removing myself from a situation where I was being mocked at the table. She then said that I was too sensitive and that her jokes were normal couple humor. Well, we drove home in silence, and she's now saying that I ruined the night and is waiting for me to apologize before she comes out of the bedroom. And honestly, I don't know if I overreacted or if I'm finally snapping after months of these little digs, because right now I honestly don't know what to do. Okay, dude, your wife is super toxic, like holy crap. You mean to tell me that she sat there and made all these comments and made a huge scene, but the second you decided to say, hey, I'm not doing this right now, she's gonna try and be like, oh, you owe me an apology. You humiliated me. You made a scene. But it's like, lady, you are literally the one who started this. You're the one that decided to like air out dirty laundry, not the original poster. All they did was show up to dinner to try and like, I don't know, have some kind of connection with your family. So no, you are definitely not the jerk. And if your wife really does feel embarrassed about what happened, then she has no one else to blame but herself, because what she did is incredibly toxic and very rude.
An entitled Karen demands that I leave the public library all because I look like Santa and I'm somehow distracting her kid. Here's what happened. So to start things out, I am homeless. No, I don't drink and I don't do any substances. I am trying to get a job, but finding employment when homeless is not an easy task. And this is just a few facts about me that I need to get out of the way. Every few days, I take a trip to the library to charge my phone and batteries so I can keep my phone on and working. I typically spend 3 to 4 hours in a quiet corner of the library, glued to the power outlet that's charging my phone. Well, today I had a cute and then frustrating interaction between a little kid and their entitled parent. I walked through the sliding doors of the library and wandered around looking for an open chair near an outlet to sit and charge my phone. That's when I heard this little voice shout out in excitement and glee, "It's Santa!" I then heard the pitter-patters of little boots running over to me. Now, I get it. I really do. A big bearded man dressed up in red with big black bags and an oversized backpack strapped over his shoulders. Any little kid would easily mistake me for the big jolly man. The kid stopped right in front of me. She was clenching her fists tight, trembling in excitement. She could not have been more than 4 years old at least. She looked up at me, her eyes opened wide, and uttered the word, "Hi, Santa." And when she said that, honestly, it made me smile and I laughed. Well, her mother came running over, scooped her child up and said sorry to me, walked away and told her kid that's not Santa. Now, the entire interaction put a smile on my face, but here's where it went downhill. I eventually found an open seat and plugged in to charge and do my thing. The little kid and her parent were on the other side of the library, but the kid was still brimming with excitement. I could see her head poke out of the bookshelf, staring at me every so often. And that went on for maybe about half an hour. That is, until I guess the mother couldn't handle her child anymore, and she eventually came over to me. This entitled parent actually asked me to leave and find a different spot because I was distracting her daughter. I said to her, "Hey, I'm sorry, but this is the only open space with an outlet. I need to charge my stuff." She very sarcastically said, "Oh, well, why's that?" I replied by saying, "Because I don't have one, I'm homeless." I thought that was the end of it because her face went red and she walked away. But no, she actually came back. She went up to the front desk to ask them if there were any outlets outside and if it was okay for me to use them. Like seriously, she actually did that. She said that the library is okay with me using the outlet outside to charge so I can go out there. So I asked her, "Okay, so you don't want me in the library, a public institution, to charge my phone? You would rather me sit outside in the cold just because your kid thinks I'm Santa? Really? Is that it?" I just looked at her and I said, "Well, ho ho ho, Merry Christmas to you. I'm going to stay right here until my batteries are charged." This entitled Karen then went right up to the front desk and I decided to listen in because I figured I'm screwed. I'm getting kicked out. This entitled Karen actually asked them to tell me to leave, but they said they can't do that unless I'm intentionally making a disturbance, being violent, or being threatening. But here's the thing, I've been here before. I keep to myself and I don't bother anybody. And you know what? I ended up being at that library for 4 hours. I didn't move and I definitely did not get kicked out. And most of all, my things are charged and good for the next few days. And while this is definitely not the worst interaction that I've experienced, I can still overall say that this lady was completely out of line. I'm honestly astonished that this entitled Karen really did that to you. Like seriously, what is wrong with her? Here's the thing, it's not even about this guy looking like Santa or even being homeless. It's the fact that this entitled Karen can't handle her kid and would rather have everybody else around her bend to her will just so she can have some kind of control over her child. Like seriously, who in their right mind would treat someone like this? For starters, the original poster didn't even do anything. They're in a public library just charging their phone. They didn't do anything to this Karen, and especially anything to their kid. He was literally just minding his own business and doing his own thing. But thankfully, you were able to stay in the library and still do your thing. I'm glad the library staff didn't cave to this weird entitled Karen's demands and force you to leave all because she was upset. And hopefully your homeless situation can get worked out, and I'm so sorry you're dealing with that, but also I hope you never have to deal with that lady ever again, because the way she treated you was really unfair, and you should not have been talked to in that way in the slightest.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
My partner's parents are making the holidays difficult for myself and my partner, and after dealing with this for over 9 years, I am now not even invited to any of their family festivities, and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my partner and I have been together for 9 years or so, much to his parents' disapproval. Over the years, they've gone as far as to try and convince my partner that I'd be a bad mother, that I'm going to eventually ruin his life, and often try to push him to separate from me. This behavior has continued to escalate as we've matured and moved to a different state. Outside of the conflict with his parents, our relationship is pretty solid. I like to think that we have good communication, and he is my best friend. His parents' behavior has started to push him away so much that they had to begin family therapy. However, his parents are still convinced that I'm the problem, and this therapist will somehow take their side. So the therapy situation is going to take some time. Over the last few years, I've compromised during the holidays, and I usually stay in an Airbnb nearby or just don't attend his family's festivities, as oftentimes I'm not even invited. I'm currently no contact with his parents, and I just don't feel like it's fair for me to shell out money for an Airbnb this year. My partner is a PhD student, so he doesn't have much to contribute money-wise to the situation. So here's where I feel stuck. Christmas is my birthday, and I don't feel like it's fair for me to spend this year alone. But my partner also has a sister and grandparents that he would like to see during this time. Despite our differences, I did used to respect his parents and his relationship with them, but I don't feel that way anymore. So I'm wondering if anyone has any suggestions on how we could make this holiday work, because we both are pretty much at a loss. Now here's the thing, he has tried to stand up for me and set boundaries and improve things for years, but his parents are very controlling. He did skip Thanksgiving with them this year because of what's going on, which was the catalyst for therapy. I have also heavily discussed this in my own therapy, but his parents will not let me speak with them directly and have flat out said that they do not respect me or my boundaries. While my partner is very successful academically, I'd like to think that I am as well, as I am a lawyer and I have a good job. Also, marriage is just not a priority for us right now because of our careers, and there is no fear of commitment or anything else like that. So honestly, I'm at such a loss and I seriously don't know what to do. Yeah, honestly, those parents are absolutely awful. Like, the way they're treating you is just so irrational. They're cutting you out and they're acting like you're the problem, and after 9 years of you two being together, they seriously still have that opinion? Like, what, is this because you two aren't married? Like, seriously, how is this that big of a deal breaker? They're both focused on their careers and they clearly are committed to each other. Otherwise, there's no way they would have stuck it out for 9 years. And I just can't imagine for the better part of a decade being treated like that by my partner's parents. Like, seriously, that has got to be miserable, and that would not be a good time at all. I know if I was in your shoes, I would just want to feel loved and included in holidays and other get-togethers. I would want to be invited and have some kind of relationship with them, but it's very clear they've basically made up their mind about you, and they're not letting you anywhere near them to try and have any kind of conversation. And that seriously is such a shame, because this really does sound like a massive case of communication issues, as well as the parents being incredibly controlling. Like, it really seems like they have a chokehold on your partner, and they're trying to dictate what this man can and cannot do. But here's the thing, in my opinion, I think it's time for your partner to step up and let his actions speak louder than words. Sure, him and his family are going to family therapy, but I think a bigger statement of his displeasure is for him to start skipping out on some of these family festivities. I know that if I was in his shoes, I would make a stand and let my actions speak for themselves. I would go absent from any of their get-togethers, and I would make it very clear that no, I don't approve of the way you're talking to my partner, because in my opinion, the way these people are treating you is so unfair, and hopefully things can get better sooner than later. My girlfriend wants me to narrate my thoughts and detail out everything that I'm thinking when it comes to any kind of plans that we want to have together. And honestly, this is such an exhausting request that I now now find myself at a complete loss and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. My girlfriend and I have been dating for about 6 months. Recently, I've noticed that she's been pulling back a bit after having gone on a long weekend trip to Mount Shasta. While she acknowledges that I'm a great listener and help her feel safe to be intimate, share her thoughts, talk about anything, she admits to being more withdrawn the recent 3 to 4 weeks. She says that this is due to it being a more stressful time of the year, while also having to deal with her divorce lawyer, plan to travel for the holidays, as well as work demands and many other things. Tonight, however, after a 3-hour phone call, she finally was more direct and said that she needed me to vocalize my thoughts more. To put it another way, she needs me to show my math homework on how I arrived on a date idea, or if we're in a new area for the first time, such as Mount Shasta. She wants me to tell her what I'm thinking through when coming up with ideas on what to do, what to see, and how we'll go about doing whatever. Now, for some background information, she has been married twice before and tells me that in her second marriage, her ex-husband would rely more on her to make decisions. He would effectively dump the decision-making process on her, having only gone 10% of the way in thinking up an idea for dates and how to spend time together. Overall, this left her feeling unseen and unheard in that she needed to drive the relationship rather than be confident it was being properly led. I get how this could be exhausting for her, but at the same time, I've been planning the majority of the dates and hangout ideas over the past few months. We're talking road trips, sporting events, dinners, hikes, movies, beach visits, rock climbing and skiing and snowboarding vacations. All of these are not an extreme level of detail, but enough to know all of the details and still leave room for her input, which I highly value. Finally, when pitching them to her, I'm calm and chill about it, something that I think she would find at the very least pleasant. She instead interprets my well-meaning intent as being more of a deflection tactic and one which serves to ruin the mood. I mean, has anyone ever heard of the need to narrate your thoughts or vocalize the mental steps taken when planning any kind of time together? Does this somehow serve as a means of knowing where a partner is mentally at? Some plans, I get they need to be more concrete, like an expensive overseas vacation, but needing to be this verbose and garrulous for routine weekend hangouts? Something just feels off about that. At the risk of sounding arrogant, I'm confident in who I am and my ability to be vulnerable and share myself in a relationship, but I know I'm not perfect. I just don't see where in the mix of all of this, I now seem to be not inspiring enough confidence in her anymore, especially compared to months earlier when none of my demeanor, openness, or speaking style, or literally anything else has changed in the slightest. What should I do? Honestly, the way your girlfriend is acting is really annoying. Like, this sounds like somebody who is clearly dealing with some stuff that they haven't discussed yet, or they simply haven't got their life figured out, and they don't really know the root of their dissatisfaction in life. Like, they're basically trying to pick apart everything you're thinking and doing as if that's gonna solve her problems with her ex-husbands. This is also probably a case of her like projecting on you. Like, she clearly has anxiety that you might turn into the same ex-husband that she's had in the past, the one that doesn't care about her input or anything like that, but the way she's trying to express that and like work through it in some kind of way, in my opinion, is completely inappropriate. It's almost like she's leading you in a direction where she's gonna try and like catch you in your words and thoughts, as if she's making you pay for the mistakes of her exes. So in my opinion, I think it's time to let her know that what she's doing is really weird, and I think some kind of like intervention of some kind needs to happen between the two of you. Because in my opinion, the way she's acting is completely out of line, and I think it's safe to say that she needs to get her priorities straight and figure out her life. I resent my boyfriend for coming from a wealthy family, and at this point, I feel like we are seriously incompatible, and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my boyfriend of about 1.5 years has never financially struggled in his life. He is an only child, and his mom still does his laundry on the weekends. His parents are extremely well off, which has led to him getting anything that he has ever wanted, with no restrictions. He has never had to look at the price tag when buying things. If he wants something, he simply gets it. All this has led to him being useless in terms of taking responsibility and initiative. Now, I know we are very young by only being 20 years old, the both of us, and some of these things have to be learned, but I cannot help but feel pure resentment for the fact that everything I had to learn at the age of 12, he still doesn't know how to do. And I hate him for this, because I've grown up in a low-income family my entire life. We are very frugal, so while he spends hundreds on clothing just to let them sit in his closet, I don't even come to school most days, so I can save on bus money. I'm the kind of person to not buy a food item that I need just because because it hasn't gone on sale. One time, his headphones broke, and his family immediately bought him a brand new $600 pair. I will never have the heart to spend that kind of money on a pair of headphones. Mine are broken right now, and I use tape to try and fix them. I'm on student loans, so sometimes I will share my stress to him by saying something like, I don't know how I will pay off my loans and be able to afford a house in this economy. I'm going to be in so much debt. And he just offers by saying, oh, my parents can help you pay it off. Let me help you pay it off. Or he'll say, you don't have to worry about housing. My parents want to buy another property and we can live in it. They've told me before they're willing to help me buy a house. And honestly, I'm so sick of hearing him talk about life like this. All he has to offer is his parents. His parents can do this and that for him. His parents will always have his back. He knows that money won't ever be an issue. And I'm so sick of this mindset. He doesn't even begin to understand what financial struggle is. And I resent him so much for it. I see our financial differences and I hate him. I hate that he has never had to work for money. I hate that he gets everything handed to him like candy, all while I had to work a part-time job as a full-time student so that I could just support myself. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking, why in the world is this girl complaining about a man wanting to help her financially? It's because of the fact that he throws around money without knowing how hard it is to actually make it. If he had a degree, a good job, a good financial standing, because he built that for himself, I would be so proud of him, and I would not be complaining at all. But it's the fact that it's his parents, and the fact that he believes his parents' money is his. I think this issue is big enough for me to leave him. It bothers me that someone is so spoiled and is so ignorant and has just had an easy life handed to him. Also, in addition, he is not just financially irresponsible, he has many health issues that he refuses to go to the doctor for. He just brushes them off like it's nothing. He doesn't have a drive to learn a new skill unless I prompt him to do it. He says he wants to go to the gym to lose weight and then he doesn't go. Like, come on, learn to take care of yourself at least. I know I sound like a jealous brat. My boyfriend is willing to help me pay off my thousands of dollars in debt, and I just complain. He gets nice things and I complain. He is a child who doesn't even know which cookies he wants from the store. He is a child who never asks to see me unless I prompt us to. He is a child who has mommy and daddy's money to shelter him forever. I see myself carrying the emotional burdens of housekeeping, as well as everything else if I choose to stay with him. And this is all because he is unable to see the responsibilities on his own. It simply feels like I'm with a child, a very kind one, but I can't stand it. Am I wrong for feeling this way? Am I taking his willingness to help me for granted? And is this financial incompatibility something that I should or shouldn't take seriously? Am I too responsible, or is he not responsible enough? What should I do? I'm gonna say this as nicely as I possibly can, but honestly, why is the original poster still with their boyfriend? First of all, I want to say this up front. If I had a girlfriend who was like, oh, I'll help you pay off all your debt and give you a house to live in, the last thing I'm gonna do is be ungrateful like the original poster. Like, seriously, why are you still with this guy if you hate him so much? You've clearly expressed your opinion of him, and you've basically chalked him up to some spoiled kid with a lot of money. You've completely disregarded his entire life experience, and you feel like you have him completely figured out, which honestly, I don't think you do. I think you have a very skewed opinion of this man, and your own delusional jealousy is honestly going to be the end of this relationship. Not because he did anything wrong. From the sounds of it, it sounds like you have a 20-year-old boyfriend who literally has no life experience at all. And sure, he hasn't had the struggles that you have had in your life, but that doesn't make him less of a person. It doesn't mean that he doesn't want you in his life. This guy literally said he'll pay off your student debt and you two can live in a house together that his parents are gonna buy. Like, if that's not an obvious sign that your boyfriend loves you and he wants to take care of you, then I don't know what is. But it doesn't sound like you want to be taken care of, because based on the way you're talking in this post, it sounds like you just want to complain instead of being grateful to have the boyfriend that you do. Like, if you really hate this guy, then seriously, I gotta ask again, why are you with him? Like, I don't think there's any kind of like compatibility issues here, because seriously, if I was in your shoes, I would make that work no problem. If my girlfriend loved me and was willing to help me out, I would be on board for being more involved in her life. I wouldn't be like, oh, well, you're just a spoiled rich girl. You don't know what it's like to struggle. When in reality, your struggling is about to end. Like, literally, this could have been you having a good life with a good man who clearly had your best interest in mind. And in my opinion, the only reason that this relationship will fall apart is literally because of your attitude and not because of anything he isn't doing. Am I the jerk for calling my cousin a hypocrite after she married somebody rich. Here's what happened. Okay, so before my cousin married her husband, she was one of those eat the rich, anti-capitalist people who blame rich people for the world's problems, especially climate change. I love her, but she was annoying about the whole thing a lot of the time, and it was almost her entire personality at one point. She hated rich people to the point that when she met her husband, she claimed he only wanted to date her because he wasn't used to not getting his way because he grew up rich and she'd be angry whenever he did anything nice for her. Even when she married him, she claimed it was okay because she could give all of his money away if she did. They moved to Australia a few months ago and they were supposed to stay there for 3 years minimum, but my cousin found out she was pregnant 2 weeks ago. And according to her husband, she had a complete meltdown. She's never lived away from her parents before, and she said she was already overwhelmed because her life has been changing so fast, so finding out she was pregnant was the final straw. Her husband is really sweet, so he dropped everything and they left Australia the very next day. He has to go back after the holidays to sort things out, and it seems like they're going to have to be long distance for a while since my cousin doesn't want to be so far from family. She told me he was planning to fly back and forth while he sorted some things out. I pointed out how that would be really bad for the environment since she still acts like she's super passionate about climate change. She claims they don't have another choice, which I pointed out is very clearly a lie. I also told her that she had become a hypocrite by marrying her husband since he was everything that she stood against personified. I think her pregnancy hormones got to her because she started crying when normally she wouldn't cry over something like this. Now, I feel bad for making her cry since that wasn't my intention. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Honestly, you are definitely the jerk here. Look, I totally get it, your cousin's annoying, and she has clearly changed her mind about stuff that she was very adamant about. But for you to go in and be like, ooh, now's my chance to get back at her, and then take this cheap shot at her when she's in the middle of a crisis, that in my opinion is so uncalled for. And the fact that you're trying to blame her pregnancy hormones on her crying is really insulting. This had nothing to do with hormones. You were just being a massive jerk and really mean. So I really do think that you're the jerk because the way you're treating your cousin is so uncalled for. And in my opinion, I absolutely think that you should be apologizing. An entitled Karen refuses to take no from anybody at our company because anytime we do, she goes above and beyond just to get us in trouble with whoever our manager might be. And after witnessing this in person, I'm honestly so glad that she eventually got fired. Here's what happened. So at around 2009, I had the pleasure of working with a woman who we will call Karen, who had one of the worst personalities in the country. She would basically say anything that flew out of her head at the moment, and if people didn't immediately agree, she'd scoff and walk away. For example, she went on holiday in Greenland and somehow got her hands on whale meat. Limited whale hunting is allowed in Greenland to keep the Inuit communities alive, and is definitely not something they're supposed to serve to a tourist. Anyways, this Karen liked it a lot, and of course said whale hunting should be allowed everywhere so that Karens just like her can get it at the local supermarket. And when the rest of the people at the lunch table mentioned the environmental issues, she scoffed and stood up. Another example is when the canteen served something bizarre, and this Karen said that she expected me to eat it because according to her, French people just eat everything. Well, were I French, I would have found that mildly offensive, but wouldn't you guess it, I'm actually Italian. I pointed that out to her, and she looked at me and said, "Wow, not French?" And she said this in a tone that clearly indicated that I offended her by not having a nationality that made her wrong. She then predictably scoffed and walked away. And yes, most interactions people have with this Karen were at the canteen, which was the place she was the hardest to avoid. The company we worked for was a medical one. I was a research engineer, and Karen was a biosafety manager or something like that in that region. The only work-related thing that I ever saw her doing was holding a yearly hand-washing course. Now, that isn't a bad idea in and of itself, as a surprisingly large share of people do not know how to wash their hands. I mean, I wasn't one of them, and at this point, I had already spent several years in laboratories that dealt with super toxic chemicals, so I went through the first course with flying colors and I thought that was it. Well, as you could probably imagine from a Karen like this, I was wrong. A year later, I got another invitation to the same course, and I obviously had to catch up with the 1 year of progress in the field of hand washing. Well, unfortunately, the same day, our distributor had asked for a long and complicated report that I was the only one able to write, so I ended up declining. This entitled Karen then came right up to my desk and said to me that attendance was mandatory. I then told her that I have an urgent task, but right as I said that, she turned and walked away without a single word. Now, I was surprised that she hadn't scoffed. I mean, that was really out of character. And I thought that maybe this was the end of it, but trust me, it definitely wasn't. You see, this Karen did exactly what other Karens would do, because when she left, she went to go talk to my manager. My manager told her I had an urgent task, whereupon she probably walked away without a word and definitely went to talk to his manager. This was the site manager, and as it turned out sometime later, he really did not want to come under any scrutiny. He realized immediately that had he ignored her as well, she would have gone to his manager, who's the senior vice president. That would have then turned into a whistleblower case where risky behavior from a callous, indifferent department could possibly contaminate production. It would have brought a lot of scrutiny on the site, which had no problem whatsoever with any kind of contamination, but had a plethora of dodgy hiring, consulting, and accounting issues, all of which stem from the site manager themselves. He definitely did not want that, so he went to me and told me to forget about the report, stating that hand washing was way more important. And that right there is how we delayed an important document, because instead of actually doing it like I was going to do, I instead spent the afternoon refreshing my hand washing technique. Thankfully, the site manager waited a few months for the next round of firing just so he could quietly get rid of this entitled Karen. And in the resulting piece, it took upper management several years to catch up with his mistakes. And when they did, he was immensely rich and the site had basically been stripped off. And thankfully, I was also long gone out of there before seeing any kind of backlash. Wow, there's a lot of things to unpack here. First of all, yeah, that entitled Karen is like super annoying, and she was basically on some kind of like power trip by being like, okay, it's time to wash our hands, everybody. And then if you don't do exactly as she says, she's then just gonna work her way up the ladder and get everybody else in trouble. And that, in my opinion, is so inappropriate and so uncalled for. But on the other hand, the fact that this went all the way to the site manager, who's already doing clearly some sketchy things with the company, that, in my opinion, is absolutely hilarious. This entitled Karen seriously almost took this guy down. It's one of those situations where, yeah, this Karen is bad, but apparently this site manager is way worse. Like, who knows how many accounting issues alone he was probably allowing to slip through the cracks just so he could get his paycheck and then get out of there. So truly, good for you for getting out of that situation, because what started as a story about an entitled Karen quickly uncovered some very sketchy dealings by your site manager. And I know if I was in your shoes, I would be so glad to be out of there before people start to lose their jobs.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
An entitled family demands that we break the law and allow their child to come into our bar just so they can celebrate their 90-year-old grandfather's birthday. Here's what happened. So I work a job as a dishwasher for a casino restaurant. The place has a somewhat large dining room, small secluded party room, and a lobby with a bar off to the side that people walk through to get to the dining room. The host seats the customers, and I'm in charge of, among other tasks, keeping them stocked with silverware so they can fold it into rolls that they then place at tables with customers they seated. And well, it was during this routine that I found myself seeing the upcoming problem. As I walked through the dining room and around the corner to the lobby, I saw that we had many tables gathered together to make a large table for a group. As I rounded the corner, I see our host talking with a large group, and the first thing I saw was the Karen of the group talking with the hostess, who was instructing them on how things worked around here. Beside this Karen was a young boy who looked to be no older than 5 or 6 years old, standing near her and looking everywhere, wearing a bright yellow bluey shirt. Now, what exactly is the problem, you might be asking? Well, our lobby area, due to it being right next to the bar, is considered by law to be part of the bar as well. It is illegal for us to seat children in this area, and I, knowing it is, and knowing that the host knows this, heads back to the bar after dropping off silverware for them to prep. At the bar, the currently scheduled head chef was busy with something, and I caught him as he was about to head back inside the kitchen. In my mind, I figured that the family would have to be seated in the dining room area for the sake of the child. So I told him about them because he could get a head start on getting some servers to move tables around inside. But once I checked back outside, I learned exactly what really happened. It turns out the family was there to celebrate their 90-year-old grandfather's birthday, and they thought that we would make an exception and ignore the law just for them. You know, as they try to take their child into the bar area, he later informed me that they were not going to take no for an answer, and that I had saved them from trying to cause problems with the host, who was telling them the same thing, that they could not bring their child in. It was against the law. They thankfully decided to leave as they were not getting their way to sit in the bar area, and honestly, I think this really was the best case scenario to avoid our restaurant from breaking the law. The fact that this entitled family seriously tried to fight the host on this law, in my opinion, is like so insane it's not even funny. Like, do they not understand that they are literally going into a section that legally this kid is not allowed to be in? Can you imagine the liability and the lawsuit that could easily go against them if that kid was in that area? It seriously boggles my mind that some people think that the law just doesn't apply to them. But thankfully, these people left without any kind of like massive outburst or anything like that, because they were very clearly in the wrong by trying to bring a child into a bar. My mom is constantly coming to me for emotional validation, and after dealing with her depressive episodes since I was a teenager, I'm honestly at my breaking point and I now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I was planning a vacation to the United States to see my family. I had done this trip by myself once before in June, and my mother had expressed disappointment that she couldn't go, and the 2 weeks that I went were absolute bliss. For context, my mother has clinical depression. That's fine, and that's one thing, and I've always known a lot of her behaviors are not her own fault. They are simply symptoms of her illness, but she relies on me for literally everything. If something has gone wrong, which it always has in her eyes, I'm the one that has to fix it. She runs to me like a child to have me emotionally validate her. If I try to point out that she's being unreasonable, she snaps at me. She threatens me, makes me do things for her, holds things over my head, while perpetually guilt-tripping me if I dare do anything she doesn't like. She's incredibly lonely, I know that, but I've been her emotional crutch and her support system since I was a young teenager, and now that I'm 23 years old, I can't do this anymore. She really wanted to go on this trip, and essentially brought up every day if we were gonna book her a ticket, so I decided, fine, let's do that, and hopefully family would occupy her enough to give me the space and time I need away from her. For context, I live with her due to a tight financial situation as I am saving up for medical school. I paid for her $800 ticket, and it's money that I will never see back ever again. I work in a nursing home on the night shift, and I'm burning the candle from both ends. I'm so tired. She has complained since the moment we got here. She seems to expect large, grand gestures from family showing how much they miss her, and when she doesn't get that, she's angry. Last night she swore at me and told me to get lost. She makes digs in front of our entire family, skewing me to be lazy, as if the last few years haven't been an absolute nightmare. I've already said to a cousin that I might just leave early since she doesn't have any money with her to spend, and the stress of keeping up with her emotional needs and her financial needs are just way too much. I came for a break, not more caregiving. My family doesn't know, as she is an expert manipulator. I just can't wait to move out because honestly, I am so done. Yeah, I don't blame you for wanting to get out of there. Your mom is just dominating your time emotionally, and I know if I was in your shoes, I would feel completely trapped, as if I have no room to breathe or do anything around the house. That is incredibly unfair to you, and hopefully you're able to find a place to live sooner than later, because the way your mom is treating you is awful, and honestly, you definitely do not deserve that. My awful job exposes the fact that I'm autistic to customers just so management can avoid any complaints that might come their way. Here's what happened. So I'm a male, and when I was in my 20s, I worked as a cashier at a fast casual restaurant in the New Orleans suburbs known for vaguely Mediterranean cuisine. There were multiple locations in the area, but the one I worked at was probably the Tony's neighborhood in Jefferson Parish, and that would be Old Metairie. You see, Old Metairie was, well, very old. It had been a streetcar suburb of New Orleans 100 years ago, and was where a lot of old money ended up moving in the mid-20th century if they wanted to actually still have a chance of locals considering them in. The social scene in this city is fascinating in the most old-school way. Now, this is only vaguely relevant to the story, but this is the neighborhood that I grew up in as well. I'm in my 30s now, but at the time of the story, I'm in my late 20s, and I'm still in university. I struggled a lot as a teen and young adult because I had been diagnosed with autism fairly late in high school, and my parents weren't the best at understanding what that meant. Now, as a note, they are not bad people, and I don't want anyone to get that idea. At the time, I was working 2 jobs, a full-time floor coordinator at a high-end salon, and a part-time position with this restaurant. Together, this was just enough to pay my bills and keep a roof over my head and food on my plate. Now, generally speaking, I believe that being open and honest about my autism is a net good. I'm very high-functioning, but I still struggle in a few places. choices, some of which I may be able to overcome, and some of which I may have to accept and live with as part of me. As such, everyone I've worked for since my mid-20s has been made aware of it, though I don't claim it as a disability. It's just some helpful information, like telling people you're hard of hearing in one ear so they don't think you're ignoring them. Now, with that bit of context out of the way, let's get into the main story. There were multiple locations in the area, and when we took phone orders, we would occasionally get calls from people who would call the wrong location. This was mostly easy to sort out, except for one particular other location. Remember how I said the neighborhood was called Old Metairie? Well, we also have a location in Metairie. As such, you can imagine that a lot of people would only vaguely register what we said when we answered the phone, and our costs on waste for this has been higher than average. But this was way above my pay grade to worry about. But what was my pay grade was dealing with the irate customers, so I came up with a fairly clever, if not silly, way to combat this. When I would answer the phone, my personal script was to say the following: "Hi, you're calling Old Metairie on Old Metairie Road. How can I help you?" Now, the street we were on was actually just called Metairie Road, but I'd add the extra old to give the customers a double hint, and honestly, most of the time it worked really well. That is, until an entitled Karen called in one night. So we're fairly busy this evening, but we're not entirely slammed. I'm handling the takeout register tonight, which means I'm on the phone as well. Now, I'm actually a really good customer service worker, but I'm the sort that needs their manager's faith and support. My service mantra is that the customer may not always be right, but the customer must always feel respected. But I also know that respect is a two-way street, so in other words, I am no doormat. So the phone rings and I answer it, delivering my usual script greeting, only to then have about 3 full beats of absolute silence before someone on the other end says, "I'm sorry, where?" Now, I can hear the woman's distaste in her voice, and my warning flags immediately go up, but I politely repeat myself more slowly because I do speak quickly sometimes and with a bit of an accent, so I understand. She replies by saying, "Why are you calling that? That's not the name of the street. You sound dumb saying it like that." And me, in my perennially hopeful head, thinking that I can just explain it to her. I've actually explained it before to regulars, and they'd always complimented me on it being fairly simple, but a clever way to avoid confusion. So I tell her, "I'm sorry, ma'am. We get a lot of call-in orders for the other Metairie location, and I came up with this way of answering as a way to make sure customers know if they've got the wrong number." Now, again, I may be autistic, but I'm in New Orleans. Customer service is in our blood. She apparently wasn't impressed by my ingenuity, however, and continued to insult me and my script. I politely interjected and asked if she would like to place a to-go order, and she then begrudgingly put her order in, actually returning to her insults afterwards before I thanked her politely and ended the call. Of course, this being a to-go order, it meant there was a pretty high likelihood that she'd be the one picking it up. Normally, this isn't a very complicated thing. We'd stage the orders with their tickets taped to the bags so that the order names were clearly visible and basically operated on an honor system if the orders were prepaid. Otherwise, it was a fairly quick matter to pull up the order and run the customer's card. Well, the Karen in this case decided it was not going to be quick, as she felt her opinion on my phone script was of vital importance to management. So she marches in and is actually much younger than I expected, probably in her 30s at the time. Since I work at a high-end salon for my main job, I immediately make her for someone who spends at least 3 figures per month on her hair alone. But I also tag her as new money, which means she's flashing a ton of expensive jewelry and designer everything with logo prints and then some. I greet her, and immediately she asked who she'd spoken to on the phone. I reply that it was probably me, given that I don't know which order she's here to pick up yet. She proceeds to look at me for a couple of beats, and then snidely remarks that I shouldn't answer the phone like that because it makes me sound stupid. I look at her and I thank her for her input, and even though I know who she is, I ask her what the name is under her order. Apparently though, my attitude demanded further commentary, as she demanded then to speak to my supervisor. Now, for reasons you'll shortly learn, I like my supervisor much more than my managers. I'd actually protected her from an awful customer several months prior, and this is before she had been promoted, and we had a really good and open working relationship. She received the customer's commentary, and knowing why I answered the phone as I did, went ahead and reiterated this reasoning. The customer was unable to comprehend this and continued to insist that it sounded stupid and dumb, and it made the restaurant look bad. By that point, I had handed the transaction off to my supervisor and and turned my back to the counter to focus on some side work while she sorted all of this out, as it was nearing the end of my shift. Eventually, she left, but that wasn't nearly the end of it. She then called back twice that evening, once while I was still there, and once after my shift had ended, demanding to speak to a manager as she felt my supervisor had not adequately handled the matter. Now, I don't remember precisely the order of the next few events, but in essence, what happened was the following, and told to me by my supervisor a month or so later. First of all, the customer did eventually get in touch with my manager. Apparently, she pulled the same BS with her, basically insisting that I sounded dumb and stupid answering the phones the way that I did. And essentially, she would not take no for an answer. My manager was an okay manager until it came to any kind of crunch, and then she tended to fold or push blame onto other people so that she wouldn't be the target anymore. Well, in this case, she decided that the best way to get this lady to leave her alone was to apologize on my behalf and tell her that I had autism. Yes, you read that correctly. My manager disclosed my private medical information to a customer so that the customer would leave her alone. Now, I realize that some folks might think this is some kind of gray area because of how open I am about my diagnosis, but as a rule, I do not use my neurodivergence as an excuse, and it is my choice who is told. I'm very proud that I'm able to speak about my autism in a positive way to people, and having it be used as an excuse for perfectly rational behavior without my consent was an outrage to me. But here's the thing, it actually gets worse. Remember that I mentioned my supervisor was the one who clued me in on this? Well, she only found out about it because her position required her to attend managers' meetings. In a particular meeting, this customer apparently came up because even after all that, she also emailed a formal complaint about me to corporate. Now, did they sarcastically dismiss the ravings of a mad Karen and move on to more important things? No, of course not. Apparently, corporate management, the regional manager, and my manager all spent the next 5 or so minutes mocking me, questioning my diagnosis, discussing whether I had anything else wrong with me, and just in general being absolutely vile, disgusting sacks of humanity. Now, if you're hoping they got what was coming to them, I'm afraid I must disappoint. As far as I know, at the time, there was no proof that this conversation had occurred, despite Louisiana being a single consent state, and I was also in a very bad place mentally. I didn't know it, but I was at the beginning of a slide in my relationship with my family that eventually resulted in me having a total mental breakdown and my going no contact and moving to another state. One of the things that eventually led to this was the fact that my parents generally disregarded and invalidated my concerns and feelings when I told them about very real offenses, such as a university professor conspiring with another student to stalk me. I just didn't have the fight left in me at that point to try and go after the company, despite there being numerous other violations that I had witnessed and others being far more easily proven. For example, they would be illegally dumping to waterways, there were numerous OSHA violations, there were health code violations, state labor law violations, not to mention the wage theft. I mean, there was so much I could have gone after them for. So yes, they got away with it, and I eventually quit a year or so before COVID. But I'm in a much better place now with a good government job and a relatively stable life, and I'm just so glad that I don't have to deal with those people ever again. Wow, that's a crazy situation. The fact that your job would not only entertain this stupid Karen's dumb accusations, that in and of itself is already really stupid, but also that your manager somehow felt it was okay to basically expose that you're autistic to a customer, that blows my mind completely, and that's so uncalled for. Like, that is such a huge violation of trust and privacy, it's not even funny. So with all things considered, honestly, I'm so glad you're out of that job. Those people sounded awful, and there's no way in the world anyone should ever get treated that way. An entitled Karen gets upset at a theme park when she has a Make-A-Wish kid cut in line in front of her, going so far as to belittle this kid for having cancer, while also wishing that her kid had cancer just so they could cut line as well. And I've honestly never been more angry at anybody in my life. Here's what happened. Over my many years as a photographer for a major theme park, I've been asked repeatedly if I've ever lost my cool with a guest, and when I think about it, the story I'm going to tell you is that very situation. For those of you who don't know, there's a wonderful organization called Make-A-Wish in the United States, which grants wishes to severely terminally ill kids. One popular wish is to come to our park, and we pull out all the stops for them. And I have many fond memories of these kids and their families. There's an etiquette in place for certain character locations, which most Wish families are aware of. off. The kid waits at the exit while someone in your party alerts the character attendant so they can tell the character and alert the rest of the line so the kid can meet the character. The family also wears a special pin and lanyard so everybody knows exactly what's going on. Now, most guests are great about this and even complimented us on making the Wishes vacation special. But there is a few bad apples in every barrel. One afternoon, I was photographing a princess character and we had a family show up who, for some reason, wasn't aware that they needed to wait in line. Our attendant had closed the line and was waiting at the end of the line. So the mother came up to the family next meeting the princess and asked if they could go ahead as they are Make-A-Wish. Fortunately, that family was great and told them to go right ahead, even introducing the princess to the little girl. So we think that things are fine, and I told the mother about the etiquette to make things easier. She thanked me at the end of the interaction and they went on their way. 2 families later, our Karen of the story asked me what the deal was in regards to the kid that we let go ahead of the previous family. Now, I explained that they are a Make-A-Wish family, thinking that that's going to solve the issue altogether. But nope, of course it doesn't. This Karen then does something that honestly blew my mind. She said, loud enough for everybody to hear her, "Wow, I wish my daughter was dying of cancer so we could cut in line." And when this entitled Karen said that, I was honestly so shocked. What the Karen didn't know was that my uncle, who's my mom's brother-in-law, had just died from cancer, and his parents had just buried him. He was their only child. So I was ready to deck this woman. I mean, that's how angry I was in that moment. The princess had overheard, looked at the Karen with an angry expression, and said in a polite tone, but still staying in character, stating that she better be careful with what she's saying. The other parents in line were grumbling and making comments about how she was an unfit mother and how they're going to tell the guest relations exactly what happened. By this point, I was on the verge of tears, remembering my uncle and just how much his death gutted his family. When we were finished with the set, the princess, who is a friend of mine, got me off stage, got me some water, and alerted her manager. And I wasn't able to go back out and shoot until her next set. Now, nothing ever came of it, but it honestly just reminded me of how much some people suck. Yeah, that's a crazy situation, and honestly, I can't imagine keeping my cool in that kind of scenario. Like, seriously, how can someone be so unkind and cruel, especially in the face of a kid who's dealing with cancer? The fact that she would say that to a child who is probably more brave than she will ever be, in my opinion, is like so disgusting and so uncalled for. Like, I'm kind of surprised they didn't kick her out of the line for making that kind of comment. Like, lady, if that was your daughter, I don't think you would be saying that. You would probably be thankful that you have one more day with your daughter instead of being like, wow, we get to cut lines now. Like, that is such an awful thing to say. And you know what? I don't blame you for getting so upset, especially when you've had somebody in your life pass away from this. It really is a hard thing to watch a loved one go through such a traumatic experience with no guarantee that you're going to see them tomorrow. So truly, shame on that Karen for saying exactly what she did, because she was truly out of line.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
3 entitled nurses at a hospital tried to kick me out of the family waiting room, and despite explaining exactly why I was there, they refused to take no for an answer. They demanded that I get my stuff and get out of the room. Here's what happened. So a few months ago, my dad was admitted to the hospital and later transferred to their rehab unit. I was coming to the hospital every day to check on him and make sure he was eating properly, and if any of the nurses or doctors had questions or information that they needed, and I could quickly answer it for them. I was also working, so I set up camp in the family room, which is open to all family members of patients. There was a small desk in the corner of the room, and I set up my laptop there and worked. Then, after my shift ended, I would go back to my dad's room and spend time with him until the visiting hours would end. The family room is usually empty during the daytime, and I have my headphones on and I work quietly. If another family member does come in, I let them know they can turn the TV on and not worry about me, as my headphones drown out the noise, and I know that it is a shared room. Well, one day, while working, 3 nurses walk in and see me. One of them says to me, "What are you doing here? We want this room." So I respond to him by saying, "Sure, please use the big table or any other space you want. I'm a family member and I was told I can use this room." I then explain that I'm just using this small desk and they don't have to worry about me at all. Noises do not bother me. This nurse then says to me, "No, I want you to leave. We want the whole room." So I say to her, "No, this is a shared room. You can do whatever you need to here, but I'm not leaving. I'm more than happy to share. She then huffs and leaves, and the other two look incredibly embarrassed. A few minutes later, another woman walks in and questions why I'm working out of there and that I should give up the room to the 3 nurses. I ask her, okay, well, where should I go? I was told this room is for family members and that I am free to work out of it. She looks annoyed and says, did you tell them you're a family member and not staff? I said to her, yep, I told them I was a family member. She then finally apologized and said that I have first rights to the room as a family member and they should have known better than ask me to leave. She went on to explain, they cannot kick you out. I'll go talk to them and tell them that they have to find another room. So I said thank you, and I also said I'm still willing to share as I don't mind others in the room. The woman smiled and then left. And you know what? I never saw those 3 nurses again for the rest of the 2 weeks that I was there. Wow, I can't believe those 3 nurses acted like that. First of all, they knew that that was a family room. They knew for a fact that this room can be shared with just about anybody, and they really should have connected the dots about why someone would be in there in the first place. I mean, seriously, that was incredibly rude and so uncalled for. And why would they not believe this guy when he's like, yeah, I've got family that are in the hospital right now. And it's not like this guy was bothering anybody or doing anything wrong. I imagine he was sitting in some corner with his small desk, with his headphones and laptop, literally not bothering a single person. Like, it really seems like this guy was out of the way, and there's no reason for anyone to be like, okay, you gotta get out. Like, don't the nurses have some kind of like staff lounge or something like that they can go to? I mean, if they really needed a room, they could kick everybody out of there and not try to demand that people leave the family room. You know, the place people sit when their loved ones are sick. So yeah, that was super rude. The nurses were out of line, and thankfully, the person who came and talked to this guy knew exactly what to do. Because the fact that they tried to kick him out even after knowing that he was a family member, in my opinion, is incredibly toxic. An entitled thief confesses to their crime in my checkout line after they come back in the same day that they robbed my store. Here's what happened. So I work in a store that has a lot of thefts. Calling security is never an option because they take 10 minutes to arrive, even when there was a fight at the registers that ended up requiring the police and multiple ambulances. Because of this, people get away with a lot of things. And at this point, there's a reoccurring customer who's stolen more than he's ever bought. Now, this isn't about that customer, but the other week, I was serving a customer who asked to take cash off of his debit card, which is not a big deal, by the way, but it failed so many times, he said to just cancel the order and just walked out while I canceled the cash out order. Well, that's when I realized that he also took out the entirety of his cart, which was about $50 of deli meat. I, of course, knew I was going to get written up and just mark it as a loss, because at least we know exactly what he took. Well, a few hours later, he came through again, and his order was now $400, full of a lot of premium silverware, cosmetics, and all this other stuff. Plus, he wanted a cash out on the same card as before. I said sure and put his groceries on my other side, so he wasn't in arm's reach of any of it before setting up for the cash out. Now, instead of using his card, he immediately asked why I moved the bags, and I told him that I was looking to clean the area while he finished his purchase. It was a lie, but I couldn't tell him I suspected he was a thief. Now, I didn't even mention the previous shop, but he immediately started yelling for me to give him his bags and that I was refusing to sell to him because he stole from us earlier. And I did not even mention that situation at all. It took a few minutes for the manager to arrive, taking over the man's shop. It turns out his card still didn't work, and with a huff, he just ended up leaving. So, with 2 write-ups for that day, one for a $50 loss and the other for suspecting a thief, the only praise I got was from Loss Preventions, who really congratulated me for keeping an eye out. So needless to say, that was definitely a roller coaster of a day. Yeah, that must have been really weird to see the same guy walk in and be like, wow, you're not gonna sell me stuff because I robbed you earlier? Not only did this guy admit to stealing from your store, but your manager, knowing this information, did nothing about it. He didn't deny this guy's service and tell him to get lost. He didn't go to Loss Prevention to check the cameras or something like that. No, this guy's like, okay, you're gonna get written up for suspecting an obvious thief. And also the thief confessed to their crimes earlier, by the way. Like, seriously, what are they doing? What are you getting written up for? I know if that was me, I would be losing my mind right now. I'd be like, are you kidding me right now? This guy literally said he stole from the store, and that's his reasoning for why I'm supposedly not giving him service. Like, it's almost like the manager skipped over that detail and said, nope, you're in the wrong, which is literally just the most frustrating thing on planet Earth when it comes to customer service. So hopefully you're able to find a better job that actually values your time and effort especially when it comes to calling out thieves in your store. Because if you have managers like that, in my opinion, this problem is not going to get any better, and I can definitely see you getting written up again in the future. Am I the jerk for suggesting we lock up the Christmas presents after my niece last year opened all the gifts and broke several toys that were going to other kids? Here's what happened. Every year, my siblings and I, alongside our families, spend Christmas with our parents. We stay at their house for a few days. Everyone opens gifts together. It's hectic, but a lot of fun. The kids enjoy having one big sleepover with their cousins. My mom likes having everyone home again. We all pitch in, and it's honestly a win-win. Last year, my brother married a woman by the name of Sally, and she has a 7-year-old daughter by the name of Mindy. Sally and Mindy are not their real names. This was their first Christmas with us, and it seemed like they were having a fun time. On Christmas Eve, all the kids went to the finished basement to sleep. We told the kids not to open up gifts without us and to wake us up when they did, and this was repeated several times. Once the kids were asleep, we put all the gifts under the tree and eventually went to bed ourselves. Well, the next morning at around 6 o'clock in the morning, I wake up early and head downstairs, and that's when I find the living room is an absolute mess. Half of the gifts are unwrapped. Several of them have been ripped from their boxes, and there was Mindy playing with some of the toys, and most of the toys weren't even hers. She knows how to read, and they were all labeled, so she knew what she was doing. Needless to say, I was in shock. I went and got my brother, Sally, alongside the rest of the adults, and Sally was super embarrassed, with my mom being very upset. The other kids were not up yet, so we tried to salvage what we could while Sally talked to Mindy. Not everything could be fixed, and she had broken a couple of the toys completely. The broken ones weren't even her own toys. Luckily, not everything was damaged, and even the boxes that were, the kids didn't really notice. But my nephew, who is my sister's son, had one of the biggest gifts destroyed, and he was sad when everyone else got theirs, while he was told we'd have to wait for a new one to come in. Well, Sally and my brother reimbursed everybody. Mindy didn't get to open gifts with everyone, but joined the festivities later. She apologized but kept making excuses. She said she didn't want to wait, and she wanted to see what everyone else got. Well, we're all preparing to go to my parents' house again this year. I put in the group chat that we should either lock the door to the living room this year or put a gate around the tree so no one can get to it. I didn't even name names, just specifically said no one. Well, Sally and my brother got mad, accusing me of treating Mindy like a baby or an animal. I said I'm not, but this is a precaution so none of the kids are tempted. They said this isn't necessary, and I'm holding a mistake over Mindy's head. I said no, I'm not. I'm trying to make sure that we don't have a repeat incident. Now, because I know that this will be asked, Mindy doesn't have autism or ADHD, and even if she did, my daughter has ADHD, and both my sister's kids are on the spectrum, and they absolutely knew better. I don't think Mindy was malicious. I mean, she was only 6 years old, but I do think precautions should be made. My parents agree with me, and my brother is mad that I put this in their heads. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk in this situation. Mindy is an absolute nightmare of a child, and she had no business being around those presents. And I think it's absolutely appropriate to say, okay, let's lock these gifts up before Mindy comes down and unwraps them all, or even breaks some of the toys. Can you even imagine how awful that must have been for that one kid? They come down on Christmas Day only to find out that their toy was absolutely broken by Mindy. I mean, if that doesn't ruin the holiday spirit, I don't know what will. So in my opinion, I think you're completely right. I think the fact that you want to take some kind of precaution to prevent not only Mindy from doing that again, but also the other kids from doing that as well, in my opinion, I think that's a really good idea, and it's completely justified because Mindy did this literally to all of those kids. And who's to say she wouldn't try to do that again this year? Am I the jerk for telling my daughter's boyfriend to go home after he wouldn't stop telling me how to fix up my kitchen? Here's what happened. I first want to start off by saying that all names in this story are fake. I picked up my daughter's boyfriend Ron from his house on Friday night so that we could watch a Christmas movie together. My daughter Molly and I had already had dinner at a restaurant after Christmas shopping, but he had not. So I offered to make him dinner. Ron wanted to prepare something on his own, so I told him he could use our kitchen. Now, he's done this before. He is responsible and uses our equipment with care. Also, as a side note, Ron and Molly are both 17 years old. We get home and he walks into the kitchen, which was a mess, and that's my fault, as I had not had time to clean it up after cooking dinner the night before. Ron says he can't work like this and proceeds to clean up the kitchen with my daughter's help. I left the kitchen to do something else, and a few minutes later, later, I walk into the kitchen to make some tea, and I hear my daughter say the mess is due to my procrastination. So I explained that I had been up since 3 in the morning, and I hadn't had time to clean the kitchen because I had things to take care of, and I had taken her Christmas shopping after work. She then asked if I was done, and so I went up to the living room to watch some TV. Minutes later, Ron goes outside with a small compost bucket for kitchen scraps to dump in the large bin provided by the city. He walks back in complaining about the junk stuck on the bottom, which did not fall out all the way. It's a mixture of coffee grounds and bacon fat, so it is hard to shake out. He tells me he's going to hose it off outside. As he's leaving, I remember the outdoor hose is off because it's winter, so I yell for him to come back as the hose won't work because it's turned off. Well, my daughter tells me not to yell, and I tell her to tell him the hose won't work because it's winter. Now, as a side note, this is the second time in a week that he's expressed disgust at our kitchen scraps bucket, so I'm getting bothered about it because I take it as a criticism whether he means it that way or not. Also, the fact of his parents' kitchen always being clean is something that he and my daughter have always made a point of mentioning a few times. Ron returns the bucket and Molly washes it out in the sink. When she's done washing it, he comes to the living room holding the bucket and explaining that he's going to put parchment in the bottom to prevent the gunk from sticking to the bottom again. I then interrupt him and I tell him to please not tell me about it because I'm just not interested. He continues and I ask him again not to tell me because I don't want to know. He has a puzzled expression on his face and then just starts again. So I tell him to stop talking about it, and if he cannot stop, he should just go home because I honestly don't want to hear about it. He stops and leaves the living room to join Molly in her room. Well, about 15 minutes later, Ron says goodnight and then leaves. Molly has asked me to apologize to Ron, and I'm having a hard time convincing myself that I was in the wrong. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Not only are you the jerk in this situation, but everybody's the jerk here. It really seems like everybody sucks in this story. Like, not only is your house a complete mess, but you also don't even take the initiative and say, hey, I'm gonna clean it up for you real quick. But that also doesn't excuse the fact that Ron, a visitor in your home, is walking around cleaning your house being incredibly passive aggressive. Like, that is no way for any guest to act in somebody else's house. And then to top it all off, when Ron's explaining to you how to keep the gunk off the bottom of your bag, you sit there and keep interrupting him and kept saying, oh, I don't want to hear about it. Oh my God, just leave if you're going to talk about it. Like, what are you talking about? This is your house. Like, this 17-year-old teenager is trying to help you out, which, by the way, that's a really weird dynamic in and of itself because you should be the one taking care of him, not the other way around. And even though he's trying to do a nice thing for you, you're being super rude and dismissive. So honestly, across the board, pretty much everybody, including Molly, was being very rude in this scenario. And I think the attitude of everybody in that house absolutely has to change. My boyfriend doesn't want to travel no matter what. And regardless of what kind of circumstances I bring up, he simply won't compromise, and it's honestly so annoying. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for 3 years. At the beginning of the relationship, we would take a lot of small trips and do a lot of fun things. Finances have been tough for him since then, and we have cut back on doing a lot of things. We now take maybe 2 small trips a year that include driving a few hours. This is fine and I understand. However, I still want to travel. Now, I asked him earlier this year if we could save money together to put towards a nice trip in 2024. He got very defensive and asked if the trips we take now are not good enough. I told him I enjoyed them, but I've never flown and I would love to go on a bigger trip. And honestly, this conversation always goes nowhere. He always tries to plan a trip for our anniversary in February, and this year I suggested going out west, but he said he didn't have the money to do so. Now, regarding our trip this coming February, I did go through a long list of options, and he turned all of the out-of-state options down. I asked him if it would be okay if I went out west with my friends later this year instead, and he got upset and said he felt like I should be going with him, but he is too broke to afford the trip. He said he feels like he's in competition with my friends. Now, here's the thing. I have even offered to pay for the trip entirely, or at least pay for a majority of it. I think this would put a strain on myself, but for the sake of being fair and trying to make him feel better, I did offer, but he refused the offer as well. Now, the trip out west is just an example that we've talked about. I mean, we've discussed many destinations, so it's not the trip itself he's turning down. These instances and conversations have all happened at different times as well. We don't live together and we both live at home. I'm saving up for a house, but I have money money set aside so I can use it to travel. I understand and respect his situation, even though I'm not sure where his money is going. I try to put myself in his shoes feelings-wise, but I'm not sure it's right to hold your partner back from doing what they want, especially if traveling is not a priority to him like it is for me. Now, my friend is asking me to go on a cruise. I've never been on one and I would like to go, but I'm worried I will upset him if he can't afford to come along with me. Now, I do care about his feelings. I just don't know how to handle this. Should I go or should I not go? What should I do? It really seems like your boyfriend is being very unreasonable. Like, it seems like he shoots down any idea of going on a trip pretty much anytime it comes up, even you just going out with your friends and having a good time, which in my opinion is really weird. Like, there's no reason for him to be upset about that, right? Like, it really doesn't make sense why he's trying to hold you back. And it's not like you haven't offered to pay for his stuff. Like, you literally said to him, hey, I'll pay for your trip, or even just a majority of it. But even with that idea, he still says no. So honestly, in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would go on that trip and I would just apologize to the boyfriend that yes, I am gonna go, and I'm sorry if you can't go yourself. I mean, it doesn't mean that you don't love him, but it does mean that you don't want him holding you back from doing things that you like, especially if it's stuff that isn't gonna harm your relationship. But what about you? Leave a comment down below. Would you go on this trip even though your boyfriend wouldn't want you to go? Or would you stay behind just to save his feelings? Let us know down below. An entitled Karen demands that her kids are going to swim in a pond that is very clearly marked to have alligators and venomous snakes present in the water. And despite my manager pleading with her to please not go in the water or to even get close to the water in the first place, this entitled Karen refuses to take no for an answer. Here's what happened. So this took place many years ago before I became a photographer, but still worked for a company as a custodian for a resort. And the theme park complex is located in Central Florida. Something important to know about Florida is that we have a large alligator and venomous snake population. The locals often tell the tourists and their kids that if there is a body of water, chances are good there's an alligator or a snake in it. At the time, I was working as a custodian, and we had a tragic incident where somebody was taken out by a gator at one of our resorts. And this is because they were too close to the water's edge at sundown, which is when the gators are on patrol. As a result, we posted signs every 50 feet or so around the bodies of water stating that alligators and venomous snakes are present. Please stay out of the water. But of course, we joke that people just don't know how to read. Now, this takes place maybe 3 weeks after that person's passing, so people were still very much talking about it. I was doing my rounds around sundown when I noticed Karen and her 2 little kids very close to the edge of the lake, literally just a few feet away from one of those signs. And they were wearing swimsuits and were setting up towels. Now, my manager was helping me and he noticed the family as well. My manager goes over to alert the family to stay away, and this is the conversation that follows. The Karen looked at him and said, "So you're saying there's alligators in this pond?" My manager said, "Yes, ma'am, at least 2. The Karen, not believing him, said to him, "Well, how do you know?" My manager just said, "Well, I saw them." The Karen then asked how long ago it was, with my manager responding that it was just a month ago. This Karen then says something really stupid. She says, "Well, how do you know they're still there?" My manager says, "Ma'am, when alligators find a spot they like, they generally tend to stay there. Every body of water has a gator or a snake in it, so it's safer to just stay away." The Karen then says, "So you're saying there's alligators in this pond?" And they went in this loop for literally 10 minutes. And at this point, I could tell that my manager was on the verge of verbally bruising this lady. So I'm taking my time cleaning and waiting for my manager to deliver the verbal knockout punch. The Karen then shouted out, "I don't care if there's an alligator in this pond. My kids are going swimming in there. It is too crowded in the pool." My manager then said the next beautiful sentence. He said, "Lady, I'll personally put you and your kids on the next flight home if you don't leave." And this was finally enough to shut this Karen up as she grabbed her kids and stormed away. I high-fived my manager and we got back to work, with the both of us coming up with running jokes where we question if alligators truly are in this pond. Yeah, that entitled Karen is seriously a complete moron. Who in their right mind would go to Florida, a place that is notorious for having alligators and snakes, and say to your kids, "Okay, time to jump in this mysterious pond, go ahead kids"? Like, does she want her kids to get eaten? Because that's what happens. Like, seriously, if you Google the words Florida alligator and attack, you're gonna see a myriad of stories pop up that basically detail exactly what this lady was trying to do. So it honestly blows my mind that this Karen would be so irresponsible that she would not only encourage her kids to swim in this stupid pond, but also she would refuse to listen to somebody who lives there. Like, lady, I'm pretty sure the manager wasn't just making that up. They wouldn't put signs up and lie to the general public if there weren't actually alligators and snakes there that would happily eat any one of your kids. So overall, that Karen was so far out of line, it's not even funny. She put herself and her kids in danger, and that, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amIthejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
Am I the jerk for being upset that my in-laws are coming along on my honeymoon? Here's what happened. So for a bit of background, my fiance and I met our sophomore year of college and started dating post-graduation. We had been together for 2 years, and my fiance was not close with his family growing up at all. In the 2 years we have been dating, I have only met his parents like 3 times, and that doesn't bother me. Like I said, he has a lot of resentment due to his upbringing and just doesn't like spending much time with any of them. Nothing bad happened to him on their part, but outside of his basic needs being taken care of, there was very little emotional support. My fiance was given a terminal diagnosis a few months ago with a 2-year life expectancy. Treatments are not an option, so we are just living life to the fullest. After he learned of his illness, he and his family have gotten a bit closer in that they see each other more often. His family, who's also very, very wealthy, gifted us our honeymoon as our wedding gift. My husband and I chose a vacation in Mexico because we wanted a relaxing resort vacation and to go snorkeling together. It was gonna be one last bougie trip on our bucket list. But here's the thing, his parents also chose the dates of the honeymoon without asking us. So they chose to book the trip so that his birthday was during it. Then they said they wanted to spend his birthday with him, so they will be joining us. They did get their own suite at the resort, and both of his siblings got rooms at the resort too. Now don't get me wrong, I am very grateful that they are gifting us this experience, but I'm annoyed that they deliberately made it during a time that they could conveniently join our honeymoon. I know he's sick and I know they want to spend time with him, and my fiance won't say anything to them because he doesn't want to fight with anyone during his final time here, which I completely understand. I think I just wish they would have booked a separate trip for the family to go on rather than during our honeymoon, a time that we could have spent together alone, which honestly we rarely get these days. Between hospital visits and seeing friends and checking off things that he wants to experience, we are pretty busy. Like I mentioned earlier, money is not an issue and could easily have been made into a separate trip, but they chose to make the trip during his birthday, so they had the excuse to join in. When they told us that they were also coming along on the trip, I said that was a little bit strange, and now they are mad at me for not understanding how important it is for them to spend my fiance's birthday with him. The entire family thinks that I am wrong for being upset about this, and his parents have said I will barely even see them, so I shouldn't be that upset. But we are staying at the same resort with rooms literally right next to each other. What should I do? Honestly, if I can be completely honest with you, I understand where you're coming from, and I understand why you would say, wait a second, this is kind of weird, right? Like, this is your honeymoon, and honestly, if I had in-laws who came along with me on my honeymoon, I would lose my mind. There is no way I would be okay with that, and honestly, that's completely uncalled for. But unfortunately, the circumstances are way different. Your husband has 2 years left to live, and this is one of the few birthdays that he's ever going to celebrate with his family. So with that in mind, I don't blame the extended family for coming along. Sure, this is your honeymoon time, but seriously, just treat this like a vacation. I think if I was in your shoes, I would apologize and try to make things right for this trip, because this is a very weird situation, and under normal circumstances where you get to spend the rest of your life with your spouse, I think it would be completely reasonable to be upset with your extended family. So I don't think you're the jerk for having that knee-jerk reaction, but I think it would be in your best interest to make things right with the extended family, because this situation is very weird, and I think with all things considered, you really should just focus on the time you do have left with your fiance. My boyfriend said that if we have a house and kids, he would want his brother to live with us so that he could save for a house, but I was honestly really bothered by what he said, and now I'm not sure how to bring up the topic again, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So we have only been dating 1 month, so it's still early enough where I'm trying to sniff out any kind of red flags. We both want a house and kids and marriage. He says that he wants to buy the house and it be in his name, and all I would need to contribute to it is the electric bill and the gas bill, and honestly, that's fine with me. But then he says that he wants his brother to move in so he could save for a house. His brother is a couple years younger than my boyfriend, and I've never met his brother, so I immediately said, I don't want that. I explained that if we have kids, I'm going to not be okay with having anyone else in the house besides us and our kids. I'm also very worried that he has this attitude of, oh, this is my house, so it's my rules. He hasn't said that, but I'm worried about it. I don't want something held over my head that was his choice to make. He equated it to having a grandfather with you and said his grandfather lived with him growing up, but I did not think that was the same as a brother. I said I would be okay with it if he was with us because he's working really hard for a house and will leave in the foreseeable future. Now, if I'm going to be a working mom, I feel like I have to have veto power over a decision like this, but it didn't seem like he understood why I did not agree. So honestly, how should I conduct a conversation with him to tell him how I feel, lay out boundaries, and how to know that this is something to leave over? What should I do? Honestly, the fact that you're talking about buying a house and getting married and having kids literally 1 month into your relationship is a major red flag in my opinion. Like seriously, why is this happening so soon? I can't imagine dating somebody and then 1 month in being like, yeah, what are we gonna do when we get married? It's like, are you kidding? I don't even know if I'm gonna stick around with you. I don't know, that's just such a weird early conversation to have this early in the relationship. But if we want to look at the hypothetical situation that's placed in front of you, the fact that he says he wants the house to be in his name only, that is a major red flag in my opinion. Like, why would it not be in both of your names? Is he having it so it's in his name so he can kick out whoever he wants? Like, that doesn't seem right to me. Also, when it comes to the brother thing, I would be upset as well. I'm right there with you. And also, how long are they gonna live there? Is this like a few weeks or a few months, or is this gonna be like a few years? Am I gonna look up 9 years from now and they're still living in the house with me and my family? Like, there's no way I would ever be okay with that, and I can completely understand why you would be like, wait, that's definitely not gonna happen. So in my opinion, I think you need to realize that it's way too early in the relationship to have these kind of conversations, especially if you're having second thoughts about even dating them. But based on what he has said, most of what he said, in my opinion, is a massive red flag. And if you do continue with this relationship, I just would be very careful with what you do moving forward. My entitled mother-in-law demands to schedule a 10-year-old's birthday party right in the middle of a California wildfire. Here's what happened. So for those who aren't in a wildfire region, usually what happens is most people quarantine inside their homes, wear a mask if they go outside, or leave the region if they can, until the smoke finally goes away. Schools get canceled and some employees work from home, and if you put a filter on a window, the filter literally turns black. Ashes fly around like snow, and it's really annoying if they get in your eye. Now, there were wildfires around Northern California, and the area looked like foggy San Francisco. This region wasn't evacuated, but it was close enough that tourism slowed down, air quality was toxic, and there were ashes everywhere. I had only been with my then boyfriend for a couple of months, and we visited his family on a couple weekends. His mom called and invited his 10-year-old sister's birthday party during one of these wildfires, and only non-family members showed up. We were invited because he was family, and to compensate for the lack of guests. She didn't want to plan it for the weekend before or after, but instead it had to be that weekend. Even if the party took place indoors, most parents don't want their kids going to a birthday party in that air quality, or they may not even be in town. I'm not even sure if her friend's parents found out she let them use the outdoor jacuzzi. Even if it was for 15 minutes, I would be ticked if I found out my kids were using a jacuzzi outdoors when there were ashes flying around. Later on, I asked my boyfriend why she would plan a birthday party in the middle of a wildfire, and he explained that they moved a few years before from a rural country where wildfires were so common in the summer, most people went on with everyday life as normal. But we both agreed that while it may have been normal then, she hasn't realized most places are different, and we don't think his sister realizes that this is why only one person showed up. She might think everybody else just didn't go or just flaked out. His mom made a Facebook post about the party and mentioned how his sister feels down every year but still makes the best of it because they plan her birthday every year whenever they want, regardless of what's happening around them. Her birthday would have been a lot more fun if it had been planned on another weekend, whether it's a week before, after, or even a month later. But the entitlement to a single weekend is the reason this happens every single year. I didn't realize how serious the air quality was until we moved to this area, and despite working indoors most of the day, the time I spent outside commuting made me sick. I worked in a restaurant, and because I work with the public, I could see everybody around me getting sick and coughing like crazy. I moved from a place that also had wildfires, but didn't spend enough time outside to know how bad it was, and the smoke wasn't as heavy, So this is why I agreed to go. My boyfriend and myself agreed that it was a bad idea to go, and we definitely would not be doing that again. But at the time, he was going through some things, and visiting family was a way to escape. Things were good back then with what would have been my mother-in-law, but this is one of the first red flags I saw, and as of today, I'm no contact, and my now fiance barely talks to her. That's honestly insane. Like seriously, why on earth would you schedule a birthday party in the middle of a wildfire? Like that literally just doesn't make any sense. And I think the original poster has it right. I literally think this is just because they were being entitled and not because they had like a special date in mind or anything like that. They just said, oh, we're doing it on this day regardless of the wildfires going on around us. Now, here's the thing. If I was invited to this party or something along those lines, there is no way I would bother to show up to that place. Like seriously, did she really think anybody was going to show up to that party? Like the air quality is awful, nobody can breathe, and what does this mother-in-law do? Oh, she breaks out the jacuzzi and says, let's sit outside for 15 minutes. But I would be like, no, how about we go inside and like, I don't know, grab our rescue inhalers because I have asthma and I think I'm passing away. So if this was the first clue that this lady's a big walking red flag, honestly, I kind of don't blame you for going no contact, because what she did was honestly insane, and there was no good excuse for these kind of actions. Am I the jerk for refusing to spend Christmas with my ex's new family? Here's what happened. Okay, so I have a very complicated family system. There's me, I'm a 43-year-old male, and I live with my beautiful wife who's 42 years old. We also have 3 kids. I have a son who's 13 and 2 daughters, with one being 13 and another one 9. But I also have 2 kids with my ex, and both of them are 19 years old. Recently, she's gotten remarried and has another daughter who's 3 years old. And with that in mind, we've had a hard time with co-parenting. When the twins were younger, we lived in the same apartment building and tried our best, but stuff happened and her mental health got bad, and a lot of resentment built up between her and my family. I wanted to move on, and she couldn't seem to take care of her kids properly. The kids themselves are also train wrecks, though I guess I can't blame them based on who their mother is. But things are going a little bit better now since she has her new husband. She's settled down in a nice house, and this year she called to ask how we were doing Christmas. And that's when I asked her what she meant. I honestly don't like talking to her much and was eager for her to hang up the phone. She sounded like she was confused and said that she thought I would want to spend time with the girls. But I know what she really meant was spending time with her and her family. I told her that they're adults and they are welcome to make plans with me if they want to. She said that my wife and sister invited her, her husband, and kids to the annual Christmas Eve party. But I said, well, those are your plans. And then I hung up and I focused on work. Then, this evening, my wife comes into my home office looking angry, and she asked me if I told my ex off. I said no, I told her the twins could make their own holiday plans, and my wife was not happy with this solution, and told me that I needed to work harder to tend to both of my families. But I told her I have one family. Well, when I said that, she was utterly appalled by this and stormed out. Now, my wife, my ex, and sister, who are all best friends by the way, are calling me a jerk and saying I need to put in more effort for my ex and her kids. So honestly, I need to know, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? I think your wife, as well as your sister and your ex, all have a very solid point. You have 2 families whether you like it or not. And in this situation, you are absolutely being a jerk. Yes, your 2 twins are 19 years old, meaning that they're adults and they can make their own decisions. But they are still teenagers and they still want their dad in their life. It really seems, based on what you're saying, that you're the only one who's combative with pretty much everybody in the family. Like, it really leads me to believe that you're the one with a problem and not anybody else. From what I'm gathering, it seems like your wife is on good terms with your ex-wife, not to mention your sister as well. You do say they're all best friends and they talk to each other all the time. So if anything, it kind of seems like you're the one with a problem in this extended family. And the fact that you would say the kids themselves are train wrecks, all because of their mother, honestly, that's so toxic, and that is such a horrible thing to say. So yes, I think the original poster is absolutely being a jerk, and I think that they need to be a much better father for their kids. My boyfriend and I agreed to get a puppy, but now he no longer wants the responsibility, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 5 years now, and we've been living together for about 3 years. Now, I love him a lot, but we decided to get a puppy together, and the entire situation has made me realize that our priorities may not be aligned. We've been talking about getting a dog ever since we moved in together, and he's always been on board. We had been pushing it off as we both wanted to be in a position where our schedules and finances allowed us to put all of our time and effort into raising a puppy. I've saved up for years, and I'm finally at a point where I can change my work and school schedule around to allow for me to spend most of my days with the puppy. Now, my boyfriend does work from home, so his schedule is a little more flexible as well. Now that we both felt ready, we met with a breeder a few weeks ago and immediately fell in love. We put down a deposit, and now we are supposed to be picking up the puppy in 3 days. However, over the last week, my boyfriend has seemed uninterested. I've been puppy-proofing our house over the last 2 weeks, and he hasn't been putting as much effort into the process as I have. He just doesn't seem as excited anymore, as if the puppy blues have hit him before the puppy even gets here. A part of me feels like it's finally hitting him that we are about to go through a huge life change, and it's gonna be a big relationship step as well, and suddenly he's getting cold feet. But I also feel like he's not sure if he actually wants to take on the responsibility or even make the sacrifices necessary so he could raise this puppy. This morning I asked him how he was feeling, and I could tell that he was not very receptive. And right now I'm feeling devastated because I know I can't bring a puppy into our household if he's not 100% on board. I think it's mostly upsetting because he had never expressed any doubt to me, but something feels off now that we're only a few days away from getting our puppy. I guess my issue is that I have no idea now if he actually wanted or wants the puppy, or if he just doesn't know how to say no to me. I personally feel like I'm at a point where I'm ready for this, as I've spent so much time preparing for it in all aspects of my life. But I don't think he's ready to give up certain things like sleeping in or having time with his friends. But me, on the other hand, I am determined to do whatever it takes to give this puppy a good home, whether it's going through sleep deprivation or canceling plans. So how do I approach another conversation with my boyfriend about the puppy? Or will this cause resentment if I just keep bringing it up? I just feel like all my hope and excitement has been lost now that I'm most likely having to give up on my own goals and desires, all because he doesn't want to share the responsibility or even express how he truly feels. He hasn't told me outright that he doesn't want it, but I'm nervous that he's been acting differently now that it's almost real. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Yeah, I can definitely understand where the original poster's coming from when they're like, oh man, I'm kind of worried about this. Because I think they have it right. Like, a puppy is a big responsibility, and that's something that you really do have to take seriously. And I can understand your logic where you're like, oh man, suddenly after we put down this deposit, my boyfriend's acting weird. And it really does seem like, yeah, he just doesn't want this dog anymore. Which that's fine, by the way, but you might want to figure that out before the puppy's in the house. It really wouldn't be fair for the dog to get to the home, settle in, and then the boyfriend be like, oh yeah, by the way, I don't want the dog. Like, that would be way worse than actually calling the breeder and being like, actually, we're having second thoughts. Because taking care of a dog is a big responsibility, and that is definitely something you really want to make sure that you're ready for. My entitled mother is demanding that I schedule a C-section instead of giving a natural birth, so she and my dad can schedule a time specifically to see me and my daughter. And I'm honestly so upset and frustrated by their entitlement, as well as my entitled mother practically trying to push me in this direction when it comes to how I'm gonna give birth to my child. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I am due to have my first baby in just over 5 weeks' time. My pregnancy was a surprise, and it's been a difficult 8 months thus far. Although low risk, I've experienced every symptom you can imagine, from intense morning sickness to migraines and carpal tunnel syndrome. I've also faced some pretty intense discrimination at work, despite maintaining a high rate of performance throughout the entire year. All of this is to say that it's been a very rough year overall. I've had little support from my family this year, and their nonsense has seemingly known absolutely no bounds. Since around May, they've been asking my partner and I to make the 10-hour drive interstate for Christmas so that we could spend it with them. Now, this would be fine, but my doctor has repeatedly told me not to do this, as I will be 36 weeks along at that point, and I'll be prone to blood clots. Despite all of this, they've continued to pester my partner and myself about it. At one point, they proposed coming to see us for Christmas, but then swiftly shut down their own idea when they immediately realized that it would be an inconvenience for them. Recently, my dad was diagnosed with some health problems of his own, which he's been told is completely treatable with surgery and some medication. But regardless, I've called every other day to check up on him just to see how he's going. In the last few weeks, my mom has started telling me how awful birth was for her, as well as every other woman on both sides of my family. I kid you not, every time she calls, she encourages me to plan a C-section and then drops some new detail about a relative who had a traumatic birth experience of some kind. I have told her that her comments are unhelpful, and she has known for months that I don't want a C-section if I can help it. She constantly says things like, if I had my time again, I would plan a C-section, as if it's somehow an easier option. I wondered why she started down this path until she started making comments about Dad's treatment plan and appointments, where she would say stuff like, "We might be able to make it out to see you for a few days in January, but Dad might have to go to an appointment on the 18th and then again on the 31st. And then after that, we can't visit for a while because Dad might need a surgery." I then snapped and told her that I would not and could not plan the birth of my child around their schedule and that they should not bother coming. They haven't even asked my partner or myself if we even want extended family present directly after the birth, which guess what? We definitely don't. I was so scared about the birth and was starting to feel somewhat uncomfortable with the idea of it all when my mom started making these comments. Every time I've told her that I'm upset about their comments or their lack of normal healthy support, my mom has told me that I'm just hormonal and that everybody else has their own thing going on. I'm just so sick of their garbage and I'm ready to cut them off for some time. I feel like they've made the birth of my little girl all about them. They've compared the potential surgery my dad might need to my birth, talking about catheters and IV drips, like how I won't need a similar setup, particularly if I go down the C-section route. When they did come to visit earlier in the year, they made comments about what I was eating. Mind you, I was 24 weeks pregnant at this point, and one of my supposed unhealthy options was a few chocolates after dinner. Now, I don't even know what to say or even what to do. All of this has made me reflect on my childhood, and I can't help but feel sad about that as well. I've spent the last few weeks just crying about it all, and I'm so tired of venting about it to my partner, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Yeah, it sounds like your mom and dad are being super toxic, because it really seems like they're trying to make you schedule this birth in a way that's more convenient for them instead of what's right for you and the baby. And that is just so crazy to me. Like seriously, how self-centered and selfish can people possibly get? Let me try and spell this out basically. Your mom is only asking you to get a C-section so that she can schedule to see your baby when she wants to. She wants you to do it that way so it benefits her instead of this being better for you. And you know what? I'm willing to bet that any of these problems she's talked about in the past, where other mysterious women in your family have had trouble during birth, I bet you all of that's a lie. It really sounds like she made all of that up just to try and convince you in some kind of like roundabout way that scheduling a C-section is the only way to go about doing this. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would be telling your mom exactly how it is and state straight up that no, I'm not going to listen to what you have to say, but instead I'm going to listen to my doctor. Because in this case, that's the only person you should be listening to when it comes to how you would like to give birth.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
My girlfriend of 12 years was caught red-handed flirting with a coworker, and now after talking it over, we're going to try and make our relationship work a second time around. And I truly hope that this relationship is worth saving. Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old male and I've been dating my girlfriend since middle school. We recently graduated from university, both with good career paths, and have been living together for 3 years. My girlfriend started working July of this year and had a fairly rough start. She became friends with this older guy by the name of William, who's been working there for 10 years, and they kind of hit it off as coworkers. William also is not his real name. They started texting each other a bit outside of work around September because he was having marriage problems and wanted someone to talk to. Now, I really did not mind it at first and thought that it was nice of my girlfriend to be supportive. But today, while trying to update a game on my girlfriend's computer so that we could try and play a game together, Messenger opened with a startup and I couldn't help myself but to snoop just a little bit. Apparently, for the past few weeks, she's been flirting with him fairly explicitly. William even sent her a picture of his torso to show off his abs, and my girlfriend answered that she would jump on him the next time they saw each other at work. The vibe I got was that it was just banter, but it still had some inappropriate connotations. Well, when she got home from work today, I confronted her about it, and that's when she admitted that she has a crush on her coworker, but she never did anything physical. She never intended to and thought the flirting would just fizzle out after a bit. She told me that she's really sorry for what she did and that it was completely selfish of her to only think about herself during these events. Well, I felt deeply hurt by all of this and I packed up my things. She tried really hard to stop me from leaving, but I just couldn't stay. I couldn't believe that she would disrespect the 12 years we've committed to each other, all so she could flirt with some married man man who has a wife and a kid. It got really late and I had nowhere to go, so I booked a room in a hotel near work. I couldn't bring myself to go back home to my parents because I know they'll never let me see her ever again if I told them what happened. A part of me really wants to give her a second chance and meet with her tomorrow, but I don't know if I'll be going back to a relationship that's already been soured, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Before we go any further, the original poster actually has an update to this story. Here's what they had to say. First of all, I want to thank everyone so much from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to respond to my original post and giving me advice. I honestly don't think I would have survived the weekend without you guys, and I think I owe everyone who took their time with me an update. So here's what's currently going on. Now, I don't think this is the choice that many of you think I should be making, and I don't know myself if I'm making a huge mistake, but this is what I've come to terms with. I'm going to give my girlfriend a chance to make things better, and we're going to try rebuilding things from scratch. I want to take some time together and get to know each other as if I'm getting to know this person for the first time, because she is clearly not the person I thought she was. If it works out over the next few months, then that's really great, but if not, then I'm fully ready to end things on good terms. After I left home on Thursday night, I stayed close to work over the weekend because I was working Saturday. I decided not to go home to my parents because I don't think it would have been a good environment to think about everything objectively and try and reflect on myself. I did spend some time with a few close friends, and they've been nothing but supportive. I owe them big time, and I'll have to take time to thank them properly when things get better. During the weekend, my girlfriend did reach out to me, but I decided not to answer back and really take some time before I said anything. On the first day after I left, I was mostly consumed by anger and frustration. I hated myself and my girlfriend. I hated the guy that she was talking to. I didn't know how I could possibly move past this. I even started having panic attacks. But on the second day, the anger kind of melted away and I was mostly just sad. I was disappointed that things turned out how they were, and I really experienced with every fiber of my being just how hurt I am. On the third day, surprisingly, I felt calm and somewhat came to terms with how things were. I tried to look at things as coldly, as objectively, and as honestly as I could. To my surprise, I did not feel for a second any relief for being away from the relationship, and I was actually thinking really hard about what could be done to make things work. I felt like I was in problem-solving mode rather than a vindictive mode, which really helped me realize I still care about her. I tried to make it as clear to myself as I could about how understanding I'm willing to be with my girlfriend and what I need for myself to be comfortable again in this relationship. I made a list, I talked to a few other people online who shared similar experiences, and I scrutinized myself with the pros and cons. I think, and I could be wrong here, that I might be sadder not being in this relationship than being in it while trying to cope with all of this, if that makes any sense. I finally decided to see her, talk to her, and see where it goes. I wanted to go into the meeting with no intentions of getting back together, just to give my girlfriend a chance to make things clear on what she thinks, what she wants, and what she's willing to do. And honestly, she pretty much said all the right things. During the time that we were apart, she had already quit her job. She says she's staying until the end of the month as a professional courtesy to her boss, but in the meantime, she has completely cut contact with William. She deleted her conversation with him and plans on blocking him once she can be sure that she won't be contacted anymore for work-related things. For the remaining time that she will be working, she will only be sharing about 3 hours a week of shift overlap with William. She made me believe that she was remorseful and very self-critical about what happened. I also brought up wanting her to come clean to the wife. She was reluctant a bit at first, but did not push back when I told her that I would think better of her if she did. She currently has no means of contacting the wife, but she told me that she will do everything she can to get it done. We talked for hours, we went to get some food, and we talked some more. Maybe I'm just really good at gaslighting myself, but I've become more and more understanding of what put her in the situation. By no means am I justifying that what she said and did was right. This still is the most painful thing I've ever experienced in my life, and I don't know if I will ever forgive her for this, but everything that led up to it made sense to me. Now, hear me out if this makes sense to you. First, we are the only romantic and love interest we've ever known growing up, and she has been more than good in this relationship up until this point. It is only normal for her to be a little more curious, right? I know I've thought about things too. I was just never stupid enough to act on it because I know the value of what I have. Secondly, her entire university and college experience was completely squandered by COVID, and she never never made any friends in her field. She never went out to parties, she never hung out with her classmates, and she never even went to school for 3 of the years of her program. She was never a very social person, but she never had a chance to mature and discover herself socially. I was lucky enough to be in a program that was small and had to be present through COVID. I can tell just how much I've gained from my time at university. Lastly, I have to admit, I wasn't perfect in the past few months. When she started working, she was under a lot of stress, and to a certain extent, I wasn't as understanding and supportive as I should have been. I wasn't attentive to her needs. And on a completely side note that shouldn't even matter, I did put on some weight since I started working. At work, she thought she was making a friend in her field for the first time since she started working by talking to William. And when she told him about the stress she was going through, he was a lot more understanding of her situation than I was. I mean, I can honestly not blame her for feeling this way. Now, I don't do what she does for work, and I cannot claim to have done a good job of understanding what she goes through. She made it clear that she initially just wanted to make a friend, regardless of how clueless and naive it may sound. How things fell apart from there, she is aware was entirely her fault. It was all rooted in selfishness, and she was looking for self-validation and gratification. I definitely can't accept any excuse for that, and she couldn't come up with a more structured answer for now. She never did anything physical, and she would like to think that she would not have crossed that line if it got to that point. Whether that's true or not, we will unfortunately never know. But for now, I think I believe her enough to just sit on it. After our long discussion, she showed that she was supportive of me focusing more on myself moving forward, where she would have to put in effort to be the glue to hold us together and overall make things right. For the next few months, we are planning to take some time away from everybody else and just spend time together talking, going to therapy, and just figuring things out. I told her that I wanted the both of us to be as truthful as we could with each other, regardless of how much it might hurt the other person, because I want to know where the bottom is before attempting to rebuild anything at all. I am fully aware of how trying and painful the next few months or even years are going to be for me, and I honestly don't know if we'll make it past this, but I think she's shown enough for now for me to want to give it a try, and hopefully this all works out in the end. That's a crazy situation, and you're very brave for taking her back, because I know if that was me, there's no way I would be that forgiving. Like, the two of you must have a very good connection, otherwise I just don't know how this could possibly work out. But for the sake of your relationship and everything that you have planned, I really do wish the both of you the best, because I really think this is gonna take a lot of hard work, and it's going to take a lot of honesty from the both of you. Am I the jerk for having a private wedding, and as a result, causing my mom to lose all of her friends in the process? Here's what happened. So me and my now husband wanted to have a small wedding that only consisted of our immediate family and best friends. Our wedding of 8 guests, including our parents, happened in my apartment living room just so we could save for a house in Europe. I made sure to keep my wedding a secret because I didn't want the stress of handling other people's reactions, since the usual wedding in my circle is extravagant. And when I say extravagant, I mean something that's on the roof of a skyscraper or at a high-end resort and hotel. Now, for a bit of background, I went to the same school from elementary school to high school, and the moms of our batch made a friend group and still socialize to this day. I didn't really keep it hidden from my mom that I was bullied by a great chunk of the batch for most of my years there, so my mom understands how I would prefer to keep the wedding very small instead of being selective and hurting someone's ego. In school, the people who openly bullied me stopped when one of them stood up for me in middle school, and ever since then we became really good friends and she attended my wedding. 2 girls were transferred in after and didn't bully me, and also became my best friends and were invited to my wedding as well, and I consider all 3 of them to be my maid of honor. Well, we finally posted the wedding and lunch party to social media, and my mom's group chat was filled with surprise. I was the first in my batch to get married, and sadly there was less of a congratulations and more of angry people expressing betrayal because they were not informed about my engagement. They expressed that it wasn't congruent to their best friend getting married without getting invited or even informed at all. I felt confused by this because these people were neither my best friend nor was I best friends with their child in school. Nevertheless, I told my mom to use me as the excuse to dampen the fire, as I, the bride, wished for this secrecy and not my mom. But they instead insisted that it shouldn't have mattered because a mother's decision trumps a daughter's. After my mom's attempts to reassure them, they turned to painting me as the opportunistic narcissist who only cares for herself since I didn't inform them of my wedding, and for using my maid of honors for an extravagant wedding, which was far from the truth. A selective group of the parents in my mom's friend group started pitting fights between my maid of honors and myself by personally messaging my maid of honors. When that didn't work, they pitted my maid of honors moms to each other, which unfortunately somehow worked. My mom, being overwhelmed by all of this, blocked the people fanning the flames. They took this as evidence to show how the apple doesn't fall far from the tree and how easy it is for my mom to throw more than a decade of friendship down the drain. Since I moved to Europe with my husband, my mom is now isolated. My father's busy with work, and my brother is busy abroad studying. I feel awful when I video call her, and she seems depressed seeing her closest friends now scared to even reply to her chat. So honestly, I need to know, am I the jerk for having a private wedding and thus getting my mom shunned and outcasted by her friend group, all because I didn't want to inform or invite her friends to my wedding? What should I do? For starters, I don't think you're the jerk at all. Listen, this is your wedding. If you want it to be a private affair, then guess what? That's exactly what it's gonna be. And anybody who doesn't like that for some weird reason, those people can honestly get lost, because they literally have no say in what you do or don't do for your wedding. Like, from the sounds of it, these people that are friends with your mom, they sound like the people who like to pretend to be your friend, but only when it benefits them or makes them look good. And I bet you they only wanted to be at the wedding, or even just pretend to want to be at the wedding, so they could either look good or, in this case, just try to make a big fuss about it. Like, I'm kind of convinced they're just perpetual complainers, and they're using this as some kind of excuse to start drama. Because you said it best, you don't even like these people, and all of their kids were awful to you besides like your 3 maid of honors. Like, why on earth would you want the moms of your bullies to show up to your wedding? I mean, if I got treated like that growing up, I probably would want something private as well. Like, there's no way I'm gonna be bullied all throughout my childhood and then be expected to play nice with these people when I finally have a say in what happens. So to that respect, I completely understand where you're coming from with having a private wedding. It really sounds like the people around your mom are not her friends, and their behavior is just further proof that they just don't care. And if anything, it proves that your childhood bullies learned this stuff from their moms in the first place. I mean, look at what they tried to do. They tried to pit you against your maid of honors. They tried to involve everybody else's moms. They seriously tried to rip you and your family apart, all because they were not invited to your wedding. So honestly, I don't think you're the jerk at all. And if anything, I'm just so glad that you had the wedding exactly the way you wanted. Because based on the way these people are acting towards you having a private wedding, I really think it was for the best that you decided to keep them out. My entitled neighbor demands that he can park his car in a fire zone, all because he himself is a firefighter. And now my neighbors and myself are all on high alert, waiting for this jerk to park his car in the fire zone one more time, as we've all decided collectively that we are definitely going to get this guy in trouble. Here's what happened. So I've been living in this apartment complex for 5 years now. I had some ongoing issues recently with a neighbor who is, to put it lightly, an entitled jerk. He blasts music when he's home and he smokes. I mean, I can smell it in the stairway. I generally try not to say anything to my neighbors because we all have to get along, and he usually doesn't blast his music past 10 o'clock p.m., which is the quiet time, so I let it slide the few times that he does. But he has this other thing that is affecting other residents, and it is downright rude. We have a small parking lot behind the building, and there is a small driveway to get in and get out. There is plenty of parking in the complex, which houses, I guess, about 150 residents. However, the entrance and exit to this parking lot is a driveway, and you can't park there because it is a fire zone. But my neighbor downstairs is a male about 22 years old, and we'll call him Frank for the sake of the story, and Frank will often just park his car there. Many of the neighbors have been annoyed at this, as it's very narrow and it's extremely hard to go down it when a car is illegally parked on one side. There have been a couple of times when myself and others had to go onto the sidewalk just to avoid hitting his vehicle, which can be very dangerous. So last night I came home a bit late and I had to park in a different lot. And really, it was probably like not even 10 feet further of a walk for me, because the rear lot that I usually go to was full and there was still plenty of parking elsewhere in the complex. Well, when I walk by, I see a car that's parked in the fire zone, so I decide to take a picture of it. About 2 hours later, another car was now parked behind it in the fire zone, so I just took another picture. Well, a neighbor tried to enter the lot, since at this point there was some parking available, and after he parked, he asked me whose cars these were. And when I told him that I really wasn't sure whose cars these were, he was very upset, because he had to get on the other side to avoid hitting them. Now, I tried to call call the towing number that is on posted signs telling us that we would be towed if we parked in certain spots. I then knocked on my neighbor's door to ask who the car belongs to, and this guy said it was his guests, and he casually mentioned that he told them to park there. I explained that they needed to move their cars as they were blocking traffic, and thankfully they did exactly that. Well, this next morning I stopped by the leasing office after getting some advice to do so, and explained that this wasn't the first time it happened, but it was the first time I was speaking up about it, and other neighbors had this issue with Frank. This was a fact. I mean, I take walks throughout the complex often, and I'm generally very friendly with all of my neighbors, so we have talked about all of this before. The head of maintenance was there and told me that if I had any issues, I should call the emergency number for after hours and tell them to get the tech on duty to call me, and said that the head of maintenance said to call the towing company directly, mostly because they have his private direct line and they will have his cars towed. Well, at about 4:30 p.m. today, my neighbor came knocking on my door. I opened it just a little bit and we chatted, and he told me that he didn't appreciate how I insulted his guests by calling them idiots. Now, I didn't recall saying that, but maybe I did. But I did explain to Frank that because I have a neurological disorder and because it rained yesterday, I was in a lot of pain. So while I don't recall saying that, I may have said it, so I just went ahead and apologized for it just to be sure. This guy then went on and on about how he was a firefighter and how he would know if there was a fire going on and how he would then move his car. I tried to explain to him that regardless, he can't just park in the fire zone, that there's over 100 people in this complex and there is plenty of parking, and we all have our own situations that don't justify parking in the fire zone. He ranted about how much he pays in rent, and I just told him, well, guess what? We all pay rent. For example, I have a neurological disorder, and the guy across the hall from me is a military veteran. There's even elderly people in the complex, and when he parks there, it blocks the traffic for literally everybody. He then basically told me that he knows the cops in the town, as if that was supposed to mean anything to me. So I advised him that next time, I'm just gonna have his cars towed. He then pouted and said he was not gonna park there anymore, so I don't have to worry about anything. Well, needless to say, I was shook up after this, so after I calmed down, I went across the hall and I asked my neighbor if he overheard the conversation at all. Well, thankfully he did, and told me that he would let the office know as well that he himself will also call the cops if Frank ever parks his car in the fire zone again. I also went downstairs to see my other neighbor, and he had heard Frank as well, and told me that he would also speak with the property manager office in the morning as well. I then texted my very close childhood friend, and I told him about the situation with Frank flaunting his status as a firefighter as some kind of like free pass, and he basically reassured me that what Frank did was incredibly wrong and very unprofessional. And I honestly have to agree, because you would assume that someone like this would definitely know better. Yeah, I'm pretty sure what Frank is doing is incredibly illegal. Just because you're a firefighter doesn't mean that any fire zone is somehow your personal parking spot. Like, seriously, what is going on here? That is such an insane excuse, it's not even funny. Like, this guy is already blocking traffic, and he is seriously trying to use his status as a firefighter as some kind of excuse to just be able to do whatever he wants. And that is definitely not the case. Like, eventually, this guy's gonna have his car towed, and he's probably gonna lose his job if he keeps up acting this way. So hopefully you or your neighbors are able to catch this guy in the act so that karma can finally come this guy's way. Because the way this guy is acting is super entitled, and just because he's a firefighter doesn't mean that he can park his cars in a fire zone. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled ex threatens to take away my cats after we choose to break up with each other. So I decided to get some revenge by costing him $80,000 when he was trying to sell the house that we bought together. And I've honestly never felt better about getting back at someone in my life. Here's what happened. So early into my teens, I tumbled into a deep depression and struggled for a long time. Around 8 years ago, after I broke through my depression, thanks to therapy and medication, I also figured out that I am transgender. Fast forward half a year and I met my now ex. Let's just call him X for the sake of the story. Within the first week of dating, I poured everything out. I told X I wasn't ready to socially transition at all. Mind you, I only recently got a decent paying job and I still live with my parents. But my ex seemed very supportive and assured me they have no problem whatsoever with me being who I am. And so 4 years passed when we finally decided to buy a house together. X's parents parents, however, were loaded, and they made a nice donation to X by splitting up their savings between siblings when we told them about our plans. At this point, we also discussed that if things were to go sideways, we would just part ways in a friendly manner and split everything back to each other's original investment. So we made some offers and ended up buying a new place in between our two places of work. Since I had a car, commuting for me was easy, but for X, it was more difficult. They had to take public transport every day, 1 hour both ways. Eventually, we adopted 2 cats as we were both animal people and COVID had just hit. And we did this so I wouldn't feel so lonely when working from home while X was working on site. However, the high I was riding of finally being independent and being able to live my own life was very short-lived. You see, my job requires me to be on call for several days of the month, and that would usually be 7 days, but it can be up to 14 days if a colleague is sick. My phone would ring in the middle of the night, waking us both up. We never really argued before, but I recall this as the breaking moment. My ex started acting in a way that I'd already seen before in my parental home. In situations like this, I learned that agreeing is usually the quickest way to end confrontation, and so I slept on the couch not even a month after moving into my own house. Things escalated from there, and after a few more months, I was doing all the work around the home, and I was the only one caring for the cats. If I didn't do it, nobody would ever do it. And besides that, I wasn't free to be who I wanted. I received mean comments when I did something gender affirming, like getting a new haircut or something like that. And as a side note, that was at a point when I was not ready to come out yet. So I created an entire plan and timeline for myself. During the course of 2022, my ex did their best to try and keep me down, but I simply wouldn't let them. At some point, my ex decided it would be easier to give up. We had a talk where we agreed we'd mutually break up and then divide everything fairly. Now, I had every intention to keep the house, as my cats had gotten used to it, and I made some friends in the area, and my work was relatively close. Well, my ex had no intentions to keep the house, and we went on with the assumption that I would keep the house. One evening, somewhere in November of last year, we had an agreement over the money that I'd have to pay them. It started small, as my ex had listed a broken vacuum cleaner on the list of items, and I started asking questions if we could just scrap it. The argument evolved, and then my ex threatened to take my cats from me as part of the deal. But this was a hill I was ready to die on, because nobody is ever gonna threaten to take away my cats. I stopped arguing and started calling a friend, as I needed some kind of support. But my ex knocked my phone out of my hands, picked up their phone and called their parents and put them on speakerphone. Then the words that my ex spoke will haunt me honestly for the rest of my life. They outed me for being transgender. Now, my first instinct is something that I won't share, but I think you can imagine how I felt. After calling a helpline, I calmed down and I gathered my courage, and I called up everybody I could think of and I told them exactly what's going on, because I was not gonna let my ex win this one. An hour after X's initial phone call, their dad showed up and started threatening lawyers and spouting things like I was mentally ill and that I would never be the gender that I wanted to be, and that they would do whatever it cost to get the house from me or just try to leave me with as little as possible. Fast forward a week or so, and my ex sent over a new version of the proposed financial resolution, and the amount that I had to pay my ex was increased by a significant amount. I wanted this to be over quickly, so I just agreed as long as my ex would cover the costs of the notary, as their amount was the maximum I could borrow from the bank, which is something they thankfully did not know. Well, my ex did not agree and ended up hiking the price up again, stating that if I don't agree, the price will just continue to go up. My ex made an entire Excel spreadsheet detailing their investment as well as mine. What I noticed was in the Excel spreadsheet, everything was tied together. If my ex increased their price, the price to buy me out was also hiked up as well. And that's when I realized I had them right where I wanted them. You see, they were blindsided and thought I would do anything to not move to my parents. I argued back and forth and played dumb at one point, just to drive the price up. In fact, in an email, I stated that my ex forgot to calculate how much more the house was worth, especially since it's been 2 years, resulting in the price being increased by 20%. And as per usual, my ex copy-pasted their calculations and said to me, "This is the price you will pay me," or "This is the price I pay you." And that's when I decided I'm gonna take my chance. I then agreed to let the ex buy me out of the amount specified, and in my reply also stated that all previous negotiations of who pays the notary would also be valid. I then ended my email by saying the following. I don't have to remind you that an agreement over email is just as valid as a contract. I then pushed them to contact a notary within a reasonable time, or I would seek legal counsel to force them to pay my share. Well, fast forward 2 weeks, and I received a call from the notary that they were working on the deed and they needed my details. And approximately a month later, it would be ready to sign. I double-checked the numbers and it was all there. And shortly after, I signed the paperwork. Now, the reason why I'm posting this now instead of at the end of 2022 is because, like I said, my ex didn't want to keep the house, and it went up for sale immediately, approximately $40,000 above market value. I mean, I had the house favorited and checked periodically, and every so often it would drop in price and receive the new sticker from the website I was checking on. It dropped approximately $60,000 before yesterday in total, and that's when it was finally sold. I calculated the damages based on their handy Excel spreadsheet, and if we assume the initial fair split like we agreed on 3 to 4 years ago, then my ex lost about $40,000 of their own investment, not only in buying me out, but also notary costs as well as taxes and many other things. But if we assume the split I initially agreed on to get it over with, my ex lost about $80,000. I am now living my life to the fullest with wonderful friends and an amazing partner who is truly supportive of my life. And ever since I learned a hard lesson, I bought a new place for myself funded by my ex, and I will never share ownership of my house ever again. Yeah, your ex is an awful person. Seriously, I can't believe they would out you like that before you are ready to come out yourself. I legitimately can only imagine how panicked and how scared you must have felt. There are plenty of people in my life who are transgender who are not completely open about that in the public, and they're simply not ready to make that step in their life. So if there's ever been evidence of someone being an awful person, just look at the way the ex treated the original poster. I mean, the fact that they did that, as well as the way they treated you when trying to sell that house, overall is just so unacceptable. But thankfully, this all worked out in your favor. Even though I'm sure this was a really difficult situation, and you definitely did not deserve to be treated in the way that you were, overall, I'm just really happy to see that things kind of worked out for you in some kind of way. And hopefully, you never have to deal with anyone like that ever again. An entitled customer makes my life a living nightmare, constantly complaining about me being his server, as well as straight up making up lies about how I served his family. And at this point, I'm so frustrated and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So this story is a long one, but I honestly still feel all the anxiety, rage, and nervousness and sadness I felt then. And this is every time I think about this event. So with that in mind, let's get started. About 20 years ago, I took a job waitressing at a nice local seafood restaurant while going to college. Being the newest and youngest waitress on staff, I was stuck working all the terrible shifts, including Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, and New Year's Eve that year. And on Christmas Eve, I had a table straight from the depths of Hades. It was an 8-top, consisting of a mom and dad, an ancient grandma in a wheelchair, maybe an aunt and uncle, and a couple of older kids. And my only interaction the entire time was with the dad. He started out by ordering a bottle of wine for the table. I retrieved the glasses and the wine and presented the bottle to him. Before I could start opening the bottle, the dad inspected every single wine glass and started berating me loudly about how the glasses smelled like cigarette smoke and that he demanded clean glasses. Well, I took the glasses, ran them through the bar glass carousel washer, and then I brought them back out. But apparently this wasn't good enough. He claimed he could still see the smoke, and now he saw water spots on the glasses. So he demanded that they needed to be hand washed. When I could finally produce wine glasses clean enough for him, I went ahead and I opened the bottle of wine at the table. Or at least I tried to. I was shaking from nerves dealing with this guy and completely mangled the cork right in front of the whole table. I removed the cork and presented it to him, which he ripped right out of my hand and it threw out onto the floor. He then demanded a new bottle, so I had my manager bring him a new one and open it for him. And of course, everything was perfect when the manager was there. I was able to placate them with baskets of warm bread and an appetizer for the table, and everything seemed to be going fine after they ordered and while they waited for their food. Their food came out quickly and I handed out their meals. In a hurry, I grabbed the second to last plate of food off the tray, not paying attention to where the last plate was positioned. This caused the plate to flip the tray off the stand and shatter on the floor. And as I was was cleaning up the mess, the dad yelled at me, telling me that I was useless. And when he said that, I was practically in tears. Thankfully, the meal I dropped was the fried seafood platter, which was the easiest thing to refire. You just toss a bunch of seafood in the deep fryer and throw it on a plate. The replacement meal was brought out within minutes, and when I checked in with the table, everyone was enjoying their meal. I thought I could finally take a deep breath and relax, and when I asked if they wanted more coffee or dessert after their meal, the dad demanded to speak with the manager. The manager talked to them and came back telling me all the complaints the man had about me specifically. He said he knew the guy was full of garbage, but had to give him discounts anyways because he complained. I took the discounted receipt to the man, and he actually made me stand next to him while he read through the bill line by line and loudly complaining that he needed to make sure he was compensated for putting up with such horrible service. Eventually, they paid and then they left, and I spent the rest of my Christmas Eve so emotionally drained, I wanted to curl up in a ball and just cry. About 3 weeks later, my manager received a letter from that guy. In big, bold red letters at the top of the page, he wrote the words, "Big Fish server ruins family Christmas." And in this 2-page letter, he proceeded to complain about every single thing I supposedly did wrong. Now, some of it was true, like having to wash the bar glasses, as well as breaking the wine cork. But the other things were just blatant lies. Like apparently, I'd been belligerent to his wheelchair-bound mother, or I was swearing at the people at the table. According to him, I was some foul-mouthed diner waitress who was throwing food at this guy. The manager laughed and posted the letter in the kitchen for everybody to see. He apologized to me, letting me know that he wouldn't write me up for such an outrageous complaint, but he did have to send this guy some gift certificates since he wrote the letter in the first place. I could not believe for a second that my manager was rewarding his horrible behavior and obvious lies, but they always did that and called it customer service. I mean, if I wrote a letter about the customer, I would say, "Big jerk customer ruined Big Fish server's Christmas." Thankfully, I never saw this guy again, but if he used those certificates, I hope that he choked on whatever he ate. Yeah, that guy's a massive jerk. I can't stand when customers act this way, and they not only pretend like they're the most important person in the room, but they also act like the server did all these horrible things wrong. I have been on the receiving end of that, and trust me, it's not fun if you haven't experienced it. It literally makes you question your own sanity. Like here you are trying to give the best customer service possible, and then one bad apple comes in there and says, "Nope, I'm gonna ruin your night." And this is all over things that were legitimately not intentional at all. Like sure, you dropped some food that had to be refired, but you got it out to him really quick and it wasn't that big of a deal. And sure, the wine glasses weren't up to this guy's standards, but that's not your fault. It's not like you washed the dishes wrong. Just because you're the one bringing it out doesn't mean it falls directly on you. And when it comes to the manager, I'm honestly so disgusted by this. They claim that this guy and his comments are completely wrong, but then they reward his comments by giving him gift certificates. Like that is so counterintuitive to a healthy work environment, it's not even funny. If you really do believe that this guy's full of garbage, then you wouldn't reward his awful behavior just for the sake of having another customer come back. Like if that was my restaurant, I would not want this guy anywhere near my servers ever again. He very clearly just wanted to ruin somebody's night, and he found this one server that was trying to help him out and decided, I'm gonna make you miserable. And the fact that this guy wrote in some kind of letter to complain about the server, in my opinion, is so insane. Not to mention that he packed his letter full of lies about the server, claiming that they were like belligerent to their mother or something like that. Honestly, this is such outrageous behavior, and I just don't think it's smart to encourage that or somehow reward it. Because in my opinion, that guy should not have been welcome back. And by giving him gift certificates, you're basically saying that his false accusations are going to be rewarded. My entitled sister-in-law stole 2,000 euros from me and my husband. And when we confront her demanding that she pay us back the money she took, she called us cruel and selfish for wanting it back, and eventually turned my entire extended family against me and my husband. Here's what happened. So to start things out, my sister-in-law and her lazy husband are constantly broke and just keep on whining about it. For more than 10 years, they've been coming crawling to my family with sob stories and expecting their bills to be paid. Their family debts are already in the 6 figures mark, and my sister-in-law is a physiotherapist, and her husband is someone who, because of his skin color and age, thinks he doesn't have to apply for a job because he wouldn't get one anyways. When asked why she and her husband wouldn't work, my sister-in-law always replies that she has back pain and her husband has bad knees, is over 50, 50 and a person of color, and there are no jobs for them, which is absolutely not true, as I was personally working in a job agency at the time, and I suggested lots of suitable jobs for him, which he didn't apply for because the hourly wage of 20 euros an hour was supposedly too low. Since this resulted in a full-time monthly salary of 3,200 euros before tax, there was no argument for getting up from the couch for him. Well, it's now the summer. My sister-in-law's birthday's coming up, and we're having a family barbecue together. My sister-in-law calls us all together and makes a speech. She states that she would like to buy a car and wants 8,000 euros just so she can do that. And then she wants another 3,000 euros for a luxury electric massage mat. And apparently the money would also be paid back this time. We ask her why she needs a car and how she's going to pay for the maintenance, the taxes, the gas, and repair costs of the car. My sister-in-law said, "My husband is American and he doesn't want to travel by public transportation and is used to driving around. And my husband needs a car to visit his friends as traveling by public transport was unbearable for him and he doesn't feel comfortable." Well, in response to further questions about how they're going to finance the car outside of the purchase cost without any kind of money or job, my sister-in-law gets really snappy and starts insulting all of us. She said that we were all being very mean to her and just wanted to put her down with our questions and show her that she was less than us and that she had offered to pay the money back. This all ends with my entitled sister-in-law bursting into tears and running into the house. Since I had to go into the house myself, I don't hear my sister-in-law crying, which is honestly to be expected, but rather she's talking on her phone to her husband, who did not attend the barbecue. I can hear my sister-in-law complaining to him that all of us were tormenting her. We were patronizing her and talking down to her, and eventually my sister-in-law comes back into the garden with a smug smile on her face, puts her phone on speaker, and holds it out to us. Well, my brother-in-law yells out that we should watch out because he's going to mess all of us up. He then calls us a jerk for talking about his wife behind his back and how we made his wife cry. He then exclaimed that he hates us and then said a few curse words. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law is there the whole time with a satisfied grin on her face. Fast forward and it's now my sister-in-law's birthday, and we, the doormats that we were back then, want to fulfill my sister-in-law's heart's desire of having a car by giving her a car-sharing deal of 100 euros. Now, of course, no good deed goes unpunished because we give her the 100 euro deposit, which she can then use. It is in her name and only she is insured. So we explain everything to her, and eventually she understands and agrees to abide by the contract. She also promises that she will pay the cost incurred from her account once the 100 euros had been debited, and everything was supposed to be fine. Well, of course, my sister-in-law lied and didn't change the account details, and of course let her deadbeat husband drive. Within just a few months, the bill was amounting to 2,000 euros. When I noticed this gap in our account, I immediately canceled access to our account and confronted my sister-in-law. She ignores me, didn't respond to my calls, text messages, or emails, but then complains to my husband about me, that his mean and nasty wife who doesn't begrudge them, the poor people, their car. My piece of garbage sister-in-law said the following: "I have not been able to sleep for 3 nights because of your wife, dear brother. She wants her money back, and that is so outrageous." Eventually, her piece of garbage husband replies to my email a few weeks later and calls me several swear words as well as a witch, and that he's going to physically mess me up so that I can finally shut up and stop bothering him and his wife about money. And apparently, I also need therapeutic help because according to them, I've gone crazy. He keeps threatening me that I'll soon get a few punches if I don't finally shut up. It finally goes too far when this aggressive jerk turns up at our house and tries to intercept and intimidate me so that I stay quiet. Now, did I mention that this piece of garbage has already had several charges as well as many court cases for violent confrontations? So I report him to the police, only to have the rest of the family against me, berating me as to why I would mess with him. They would say stuff like, "Don't poke the bear," and then I'm told that I'm to blame for the whole mess and that me and my husband have enough money and that we should let the poor relatives have it. My mother-in-law even goes so far that she would go begging from the family so that we greedy people would get our money back so that we can finally stop annoying everybody. Now, of course, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law don't pay anything back, nor do they even begin to apologize. Like, we literally get nothing from them. But they are smear campaigning us on full throttle. My husband's family rolls their eyes at me when I bring up the subject and keep on telling me that it's my fault and that I overreacted with my complaint. night. I'm even told that my reaction was extremely over the top and that I'm actually the jerk in this situation. I'm getting rebuked from my family-in-law from left, right, above, and below. It ends with my sister-in-law and brother-in-law turning up at my father-in-law's birthday party a couple of months later and making a massive scene, saying that they are mistreated and bullied in the family, and that we would all soon see where that leads, which is just another famous threat from my stupid brother-in-law. My brother-in-law then attacks all the men in the family at this event and threatens them with physical violence and tries to provoke my husband in particular to get into some kind of physical altercation. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law shouts at me that I can be held personally responsible for the fact that the family is now destroyed and everything is apparently in shambles. She mockingly asks me if I'm proud of my destructive work. My brother-in-law storms up to me shortly afterwards and shouts that he would do anything to protect his family and that he might get physical with me as well. So you know what? I called the police. And when we finally heard the police siren coming around the corner, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law fled the scene. Meanwhile, and after 3 long years, we got the money back from my mother-in-law as she had condescendingly offered to go begging so that we would stop nagging about the money. She was grumbling, kicking, and screaming, but we now have the stolen money back from her. So she saved her grown-up, unreliable daughter's rear end. My thieving sister-in-law recently came scratching at our door again to announce that she had severe depression because of the way that we had treated her. Apparently, there was so much negativity coming from me personally that she needed to go to a very special clinic to get treatment for her depression. But I told her to get lost and that she should tell her sob stories to somebody else. My husband also told her that he no longer had time for her. Now, I can understand that the family-in-law felt it was ridiculous and not worth mentioning that we had been robbed of 2,000 euros. I mean, previously, my sister-in-law had stolen a whopping 20,000 euros from her own daughter, and this was her daughter's college fund. When the daughter asked her mother where the money was, she just shrugged her shoulders and said, "I had to pay the bills." I am now, as of today, no contact with my in-laws, and my husband is very low contact. I'm finally free of these pests, and unfortunately, I have to say that my husband's family, with the exception of him, are all absolute rubbish. They cover up intra-family thefts, they tolerate verbal, physical, and emotionally awful things going on in their lives, and they practice perpetrator-victim reversal, and I will never sit down at the same table with them ever again. Man, I'm so glad to see that you went no contact with your in-laws, because those people sound crazy. How on earth could anybody seriously act like that and think that you're the problem in the family? Like, this sister-in-law stole $20,000 from her daughter. Like, she just straight up took it and said, "Oh, I gotta pay the bills." And the rest of the family is okay with this somehow? Like, seriously, what is going on here? Like, reading through this, it felt like I was in opposite world. Like, who in their right mind would try and blame the original poster for anything? It simply doesn't make sense, and in my opinion, it is so uncalled for. So I really hope you never have to deal with these people ever again. They sound like terrible people, and hopefully they stay out of you and your husband's life.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
My boss playfully tells me that I'm grounded and that I need to stay in the corner. And as a result of me maliciously complying, me, my boss, as well as the guests at the theme park I was working at, all had the biggest laugh we've ever had in our life. And I still look back on that memory with a lot of fondness, as it truly was a lot of fun. Here's what happened. Years ago, I was a photographer at a major theme park and worked with characters on an almost daily basis. Our famous character is a mouse that owns the whole park. Everyone who worked there either referred to him as Boss or Mr. Mouse around the guests. For the purpose of this post, I'll refer to him as Boss. One morning, I was assigned to work with the boss. He was in a mischievous mood and being an overall goofball. I enjoyed this, and so did our guests and character attendants. One of his favorite things to do when he was in a mischievous mood was to try to pass me the autograph books that he had signed, conveniently ignoring the fact that I had my hands full with a camera. As I went to take them, he'd drop them and run away, making a laughing motion. So we're with this family, and Boss does his usual pass the autograph books to the photographer stunt. He holds them out expectantly, and I said, "I'd love to, boss, but you know I don't know my ABCs." At this point, the boss drops the books, takes my hand, moves me to a corner, and points to the floor, telling me to stay like a naughty child. So that's when I decided to maliciously comply. I said to him, "Okay, I guess I'm grounded," and I said that with a pout. Everyone at this point is howling with laughter, even our head manager who had stepped in to watch. So boss continues his interaction with the family, and now at the end of the session, we have the family pose with the character. So boss gets together with everybody and poses in a really funny manner, except there's one big problem. There's no photographer to take the picture. After a moment, the boss motions to the family to wait and stomps over to my corner. I'm fighting back a grin at this point as he turns me around, points to my camera, and then held his hands up as if to say, "What gives?" I then look at him with a sweet, innocent smile, and I say, "Boss, you told me I'm grounded, remember?" It's at this point my head manager pipes in by saying, "That you did, Mr. Mouse." Boss playfully drags me back to my spot and poses again. We get the photo and send the family on their way. My head manager stepped out with them and offered to send them through again to get more pictures because I didn't take that many on account of me being grounded. The family accepted, although the dad, who had tears in his eyes at this point, said that it was the hardest he's laughed in a long time. And to this day, this memory still brings a smile to my face. Well, that was a surprisingly wholesome story. I honestly did not expect that. This is honestly exactly how you want your work environment. You have coworkers that you can have fun with, you're not taking yourself super seriously, and everyone's able to laugh at the end of the day. Like, that sounds like that would be a really fun place to work at. So honestly, good for the original poster for having such a fun place to work at, because getting to goof off like that at work really is like a morale boost. And it's really cool to see that jobs like this really do exist. Am I the jerk for refusing to change my first name just so I could work at my father-in-law's company? Here's what happened. So to start things out, I'm a 20-year-old female and I have an unusual name. It's one of those hated names that people think are their parents being a tryhard or making their kids' lives harder instead of picking a real name. Think of something like Princess or Ocean or Moon. Now, here's the thing. I love my name, and I was never bullied for my name in school, and I have a very good job, so it never really held me back there. I married my husband while we were still in college, and that's when I met his parents. They were nice. They were kind of taken aback by my name when we first met, but still, they were nice. We had no issues back then. But recently, my father-in-law has mentioned how much he would love to have me work for him. I thought it was a very sweet thing to say, but he started getting more serious about it after a few weeks. He ended up asking if I would actually be interested, and I said that it would depend on certain factors, but it would be nice to work for the family business. He didn't say anything else right away, but then a couple of days later, he told me he was serious about wanting me to work there, but I would need to change my name to something less embarrassing because the negative impact on his business was not something he was willing to risk, and a ridiculous name is a sure way to harm your relationship with important business contacts. Now, here's the thing. I told him I understand if he felt my name could not fit in with his business, but I would not change my name, so we should just forget the offer. Well, for the second time when talking to him, he was taken aback. Another couple of days passed, and my husband told his dad he was awful for offering me a job with those conditions, like getting my name changed as being attached to it. Then, my mother-in-law told me it was a little too hasty to refuse without thinking it over. I told her that the thing is, I love my name, and I don't want to change it just for a job. My father-in-law is offended that I wasn't willing to consider it. He told me it was an amazing place to work, which I do know. I mean, I've heard great things from the employees, and I should be willing to make small adjustments so I can be more professional presenting in the business world. But I told him I wasn't, and his attitude about my refusal to change my name made me glad I had not agreed to work for him. Now my father-in-law and my mother-in-law feel I should have been more willing to compromise my own name. I think this is crazy, and my husband agrees with me and told his parents that they were crazy, but they are not happy with me. So now I need to know, am I the jerk for refusing to change my first name just to work at my father-in-law's company? No, your father-in-law is insane. He is absolutely the jerk in this situation. If his business and place of employment really is so good, then why on earth would you force somebody to change their name just so they can work there? Clearly, it's not that good if you have to go to the court system and be like, hey, let me change my name just for my job. Like, seriously, that is insane to me. Like, if I can't use my own real name at my job, then there's no way I'm going to be willing to work at a place like that. And you know what? This isn't some kind of like small adjustment. This feels way too much, and it honestly seems like he's trying to change your name for manipulative reasons. And it feels like it stems back to him being embarrassed by it or something like that. So honestly, good for you for turning this guy down. The way he was acting was super creepy, and if I was in your shoes, I would not want to change my name for a second just to work at some job. Today, I messed up by misunderstanding my CEO and thinking that he was about to buy me a new car as some kind of reward for my work at our job. But now I'm completely humiliated and so embarrassed as he very bluntly corrected himself, leaving me feeling totally humiliated in the process. Here's what happened. So for a bit of background, I work for a company that buys company cars from a particular dealership. Each company car has the same dealer logo, and I have worked for this company for just over a year. Now, for the situation at hand, I am a one-person marketing and advertising department at a small family-run company that has been expanding, and I have been rewarded for advancements in our field. I often interface one-on-one with the CEO who is good at advertising and who knows exactly what he wants for our most important ads. It can be difficult to balance my own interests with an industry that I am not as familiar with, so I appreciate the input. So I'm in the CEO's office while strategizing our latest ad when he asked if my car is being fixed. The car in question ran into some trouble while traveling to a company event, so it shows that he cares when he asked me that. I let him know that the local shop is working on it and I should know what is going on next week. I purchased the vehicle from this company and it is very recognizable in the field. The CEO follows up by saying, "Aren't you due for a new car?" owing to the fact that I drive an outdated car, to which I responded by saying, "Well, of course I am." Now, I am a tech-focused person and he can obviously see that I would rather have a car that has the latest bells and whistles. He thought about it for a second and responded by saying, "You're thinking about a brand new car, right?" To which I responded by saying, "Yes, absolutely." And this is the usual kind of banter for our field and our kind of work. He thought for a moment and followed up by saying, "Would you like me to take you to the dealership that we get all of our company cars from?" And at this point, I lost my mind and I emphatically said, "Absolutely." Well, he paused for a few moments before saying, "I wouldn't be buying you a new car, but I could definitely work out a deal for you." And to say that I was crushed in this moment would undersell it entirely. I can't even imagine how red my face must have looked. It has always been obvious that I was embarrassed due to my red face, and one of my coworkers was also in the room. Thankfully, I trust this coworker, or else I would be mortified about being bullied about this situation. I kept my facial expressions as stoic as possible and made a comment that my wife would destroy me if I tried to purchase a new car. It went about as well as you could expect it as I faded back into the work at hand. I couldn't believe how embarrassed I was. I drive a car that is outdated because that's what I could afford to survive this job. I don't think the CEO thought anything of it, and I'm not trying to take it personally, but it really sucks that for a moment I thought I was being recognized for my work, and instead I was misreading the situation completely. And as a man, it was honestly hard not to cry on my drive back from work. Yeah, that's a really funny situation to be stuck in. Here you are at a job that you've been working at for a while now, and you're used to the fact that you get some kind of advancement or some kind of reward for doing good in your field. So when the CEO starts talking the way that they were, honestly, I think anyone could have been fooled by the way he was talking. This guy was really leading the conversation. Let's be honest for a second. He really made it seem like he was going to take you to this car dealership and he was going to buy you a new car as some kind of reward for doing such a good job. I know if I was in your shoes, I might have assumed that something like that was in the works right at that moment. Based on the way the CEO was talking to you, he really made it seem like he was about to drop some big surprise on you. And I don't think that's your fault at all. As the CEO of a company like this, I'm sure you should probably be careful with the way you talk to people below you. What he probably thought was innocent banter to be "Oh, how's your car going?" eventually led to him being "Ooh, let's go to the car dealership together." If he seriously doesn't think he was hinting at, "Oh, I'm gonna buy you a car," then this guy is completely clueless or he's crazy. Now, when it comes to you feeling embarrassed in any kind of way, I think you're being way too hard on yourself, and I don't think it's that big of a deal. Sure, the CEO saw your enthusiasm and he probably realized, "Oh, wait, hold on, I'm not actually gonna buy you a car." And I don't think that's a knock at you in any kind of way. It was maybe him catching himself and realizing, "Oh no, wait a second, what have I done?" So in my opinion, I don't think you should feel bad about this. I don't think you getting excited at the leading statements that the CEO was making in any kind of way is your fault in the slightest, because this guy really did make it sound like he was gonna buy you a car. And that blame falls squarely on the CEO's shoulders and not yours. An entitled Karen demands that I give the final exam answers to her child just so he can pass my class. But when I tell her no, she threatens to spread false rumors about me, as well as to try and get me kicked out of college. And I've honestly never been more blown away by an entitled Karen's actions in my life. Here's what happened. So for a bit of context, I'm soon graduating college, but where I live, we need to complete what is referred to as social service hours. And you basically work in a program related to your major. And for mine, I was helping in a program to teach English for free to students. Since this program was free and technically we weren't actually grading the students, many sometimes wouldn't even pay attention, especially since since classes were online. I tried making my class as entertaining as I could. It was small and it only had 12 students. Now, mind you, I was just one of the college students that were participating in this program as teachers. This program was not created by my college, and we were given all teaching materials, but the last test was actually going to be in person with the people who organized the program in the first place. The surprise for the students came when they were told for the last test, in order to get the diploma that proved they completed the English program, they were going to be graded and they needed at least 50 out of the 100 students to pass. So I informed the students, and for the most part, most of the teenagers from 15 to 17 years old were doing fine. We had been working together for about 16 weeks by now, but out of my class of 12, there was this student we had some difficulties with, and we'll just call him Mike for the sake of the story. Mike is not his real name. Now, he is not a bad kid, but since the beginning, Mike made it clear that he didn't want to learn English. He wanted to learn French. And later on, after what happened with his mother, I even learned that at one point he almost got a scholarship to study in a school that teaches French as a second language. But his mom sent him to a smaller school that is well known for teaching English, but he was struggling, so that's why he was in this class. After the announcement that the last test was going to be graded, I told the class that if they would like, we could do some extra sessions. Now, this was something extra that I offered, not from the program at all, mostly because I had the free time and the fact that they were going to be graded for the program. Out of the 12 students, 11 joined the extra classes, and I guess you might have an idea about who did not join us. But now we were 2 weeks away from the final test when I first started getting contacted by Mike's mother, who is the Karen of this story. Now, at first she seemed like a concerned mother, but her mask soon slipped away, and by now the extra classes I had given had finally stopped because I no longer had the extra time because of my job. I told her as such, and she absolutely went nuts, saying how I needed to find the time and teach her son. And she was screaming all of this at me over the phone. And yes, since the classes were online, the parents had my phone number because we communicated with them through WhatsApp. Now, I really tried to be reasonable and said that if they could come up with the topics that he needed help with, I will try to help him. And also with the condition that there is a parent present. Because you know what? I didn't want any misunderstandings or someone thinking that we didn't study. Fast forward to the extra classes, and Mike would connect and his aunt was always in the background. But he was trying to fit almost 16 weeks worth of lessons in less than 2 weeks. By the time it was 1 week before the exam is right when I started receiving the calls from the entitled Karen. I couldn't answer most of them because I was working, but apparently that ticked her off even more because she started leaving me messages accusing me of ignoring her. And in the end, in the space of a day, she called me 24 times while I was on my job. After I finished my shift, I called her back because I thought something bad had happened. But nope, instead she just started yelling at me. Then she started saying that I was a bad teacher, and then she demanded that I just share the final test answers because Mike needed to have that diploma. Now, I tried to tell her that I didn't have the test results, and even if I did, obviously I couldn't just share them. But it's right then that Karen went crazier and started saying how she was going to make sure I got expelled from college because I was ruining her son's future. She also started saying how she was going to tell everyone that I was asking her son for extra classes just so I could try and spend time with him. But thankfully, my college director and the teacher in charge of connecting us with the people from the project knew about these extra classes and even encouraged us to give them if we had free time. In the end, I hung up on her, but I couldn't block her just yet because any news that we got, we had to share that with the parents, and that was done through text messaging. In the end, I took a screenshot of her threats and sent them to my teacher in charge and the person from the program I communicated with. This entitled Karen was given a stern talking to and was told that the day of the exam, she was not allowed to take her son. Someone else had to take him to the place of the exam, and also her son was going to get observed more often just to ensure that he wasn't cheating. I then had to endure the Karen bothering me for the rest of the week because she still was the main contact for Mike, even after everything that went down. So I was so happy to finally block her after giving the last instructions for the day that they were having the exam, which basically they were divided into groups and a teacher from the program took care of them from there. Later on, I found out from this teacher that took care of my former students that the Karen did try to spread rumors that I was a bad teacher and a creep. But since the other students did quite well in my classes, none of the other parents complained and actually were on my side. She also apparently tried to get in contact with my college to complain, but that was also completely shot down. And I honestly feel so sorry for Mike, because his mom is absolutely an entitled Karen. Yeah, Mike's mom sounds really crazy. First of all, he didn't even want to learn English in the first place. Like, this kid clearly has a passion for the French language, and he wanted to go to a school specifically for that, but his mom got in the way and destroyed that aspiration of his. Which honestly, with all things considered, I'm not surprised. Like, she would rather have her son cheat to get a good grade instead of learning the material and getting better at English. So honestly, good for you for putting up with this in a professional way, because I think if somebody tried to ruin my college career, as well as come up with awful false accusations, I do not think I would have reacted in a professional manner. But in the end, you did exactly what you needed to do, despite this Karen acting incredibly insane.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
Am I the jerk for playing chess while my wife was in labor, about to give birth to our first son? Here's what happened. So my wife gave birth to our first son recently, and I would like to start by saying that I was very excited to have a baby, and I'm truly looking forward to being a father. My wife did not have any health complications or a particularly difficult birth, except for an ultra-long labor that took about 27 hours in total. She slept through a lot of it in the beginning, but as it got progressively worse, she started to get more uncomfortable. Since we had been in the room for a long time, I had started to get antsy. We both played on the Nintendo in the beginning, but she didn't want to anymore as the labor progressed. About 23 hours in, I started to play online chess on my phone as I held her hand through contractions. She was fine with it at first, but then she snapped at me and told me to put my phone away, so I did just that. Then she told me off for bouncing my leg and then drumming my fingers on the bed. I told her to stop yelling at me and to tell me exactly what she wanted me to do, which was apparently the wrong thing to say because she told me to leave and send her father in instead. Now this really ticked me off, and I told her that I was not going to miss the birth of my child. She said that she would call me back when it was time, but I really needed to leave as I was getting on her last nerve. So I went out, and I went to where her parents were waiting, and I told her dad to go in. Now I was pretty upset because I wanted to be there to take care of her. My mother tried to make me feel better, saying that it was a vulnerable time and different women needed different things. We were called in when she was finally giving birth, and I got the baby while her parents comforted her just like we planned. Everything seemed okay again until her parents left and she asked if I was going to apologize. I told her that I didn't think I needed to, and that if anyone owed me an apology, it was her. Ever since then, she has been very annoyed, and she has also not been properly talking to me. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Honestly, I think the way you were acting was completely out of line. Your wife is giving birth. This isn't her going to the doctor for a checkup. She's about to give birth to your first son, and here you are playing online chess on your phone. Like, seriously, put the phone down and pay attention to your wife. This is not the time to be playing games all because you're bored and you feel anxious. You need to grow up and get your head in the game and realize what's about to happen. Like, maybe you don't know how dangerous giving birth is, but guess what? Giving birth to a child is really dangerous. A lot of things can go wrong, and this is really stressful on her body. So yeah, you should have apologized right then and there. You should have said, I'm sorry for not being there for you, and I truly apologize for my actions. But instead, you want to act selfish and pretend like, oh man, I'm not the one with the problem. But seriously, in my opinion, I absolutely think you're at fault here, because your behavior and your attitude towards your wife when she's about to give birth was completely inappropriate and so uncalled for. And if anything, you are definitely the one that needs to apologize and not her. Am I the jerk for taking the family on vacation without my wife and stepdaughter? Because now they want to stay behind just so they can go to my stepdaughter's friend's birthday party. And at this point, I'm so frustrated and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my stepdaughter is in high school and has a best friend that she's known since they were babies. My wife and I have 2 children together, and my stepdaughter's best friend has a birthday in December. Now, we are well aware of her birthday because we attend it every single year. This year, my side of the family planned to take a huge overseas Christmas vacation, which required us to ask the friend's mother for the party date. We planned and bought our tickets to leave 2 days after the party just so my stepdaughter wouldn't miss it. Well, Monday, my stepdaughter came home and told us that the party date was moved to accommodate some of her friend's family members who decided last minute to fly in for it. Well, here's the problem. The date was moved to one that was well after our departure departure date. So as you can see, this is the problem. For starters, we're not made of money, so for us to change the flight and hotel for our family will more than double the cost overall. And secondly, this will be a 2 weeks overseas trip, so I already had my vacation approved and I can't change it. If we fly out after the party, my vacation will be cut down to only a week. Also, I only get to see some of my siblings only at Christmas, so if I don't go this year, I won't see them again until next year. I mean, my entire side of the family planned our vacation around the party date months ago. My original solution was to tell her friends' parents to keep their original date since my family planned around their schedule, but my wife immediately shot down that idea. My second solution was for us to leave as planned, but change only my stepdaughter's ticket since she's on break and is old enough to fly herself. Well, my wife shot that down too, since she's also friends with the other mother and she wants to go to the party. My wife's solution is for us to just fly out after the party, but I do not like this idea at all because of the added cost and the lessening time. Our talk turned into arguments that lasted all week. Last night, my wife put her foot down and said that we're not missing the birthday party, to which I replied that she's not missing the birthday party. I told her that I'm flying out with our 2 kids as planned whether or not she's on the flight. That took our argument to the next level, to the point where my stepdaughter called me a jerk. So then I tried to ground her, at which point my wife said I couldn't because she was justified. So right now everything's a mess and I seriously don't know what to do. For starters, I don't think you're a jerk at all. The fact that your wife and your stepdaughter are saying, oh, let's just leave after the party, that in my opinion is completely missing the point. You spent a lot of money on these tickets. Why should you have to sacrifice your time all because this other family changed their date all of a sudden? Which, by the way, that was an awful thing to do. Like, the fact that they changed that, even after knowing that you scheduled your vacation around their stupid party, that in my opinion is so unbelievably toxic. Because here's the thing, I completely agree with the original poster. These tickets and plans and the hotels, they probably cost thousands of dollars. So to change them all overnight simply because these idiots changed their party date, that in my opinion is completely unreasonable. Like, in my opinion, I think your wife and stepdaughter are completely wrong, and it's time to either face the music or find some other kind of accommodations. Because at the end of the day, this is not the original poster's fault that the date changed. This is literally the other family's fault and their own selfish desires to have a different date, all because they wanted their family to fly in on a specific time and date. Like, they changed plans without consulting you first and completely screwed up everything for your plans and your vacation. So no, you are definitely not the jerk. Your wife and your stepdaughter are being unreasonable, and if they want to go to that party, then they are more than welcome to change their dates of their flights and fly out just a little bit later to go on vacation. My mom is awful with money, and it's now at the point where she is constantly asking me for money, and she only seems to treat me like an ATM that she can withdraw money from. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So let me preface this by saying my mother has a heart of gold. She truly is my best friend in this world, and I would do anything for her. Now, with that in mind, I wanted to start off by saying I grew up experiencing homelessness more than once in my life. My dad was out of the picture due to him having substance issues and a criminal history. After living in and out of cars and hotel rooms, I got seriously sick of being broke. I looked at my upbringing and I said I'd never want to go through that ever again. So I got myself through school, undergrad, and now I'm about to graduate dental school to be a dentist. After a brief stint of being homeless, in 2014, which was my senior year of high school, my mom's aunt suddenly passed away. She left my mom everything she had to her name, including a home that was valued at approximately $400,000, as well as IRAs and other stocks. This drastically changed our lives. We went from counting pennies in the couch cushions to practically living like kings. The home was in a retirement community that had a minimum age to reside, and instead of keeping the house, my mom ended up selling it. She got laid off from her job and made zero effort to find a new one. She blew through all of the money, funding her expensive smoking habits of 2 packs a day, as well as buying expensive dinners and lavish Christmases. Suffice to say, we're in 2023 now, and she is flat broke. My older brother still lives with her and makes minimum wage. He too is extremely poor with money, going on random trips to random places in the United States just for fun. He has zero savings and just throws away whatever he makes for random trips and junk food. As I stated, I'm in my last year of dental school, and not many people know this, but dental school is more expensive than medical school. I mean, I stand at about $500,000 million in debt as I type this. I have a $3,600 licensing exam coming up and a 1-year-old son to take care of. My husband is a foreigner from Asia, and in his country, saving is emphasized more than spending. I feel like in our American culture, spending is more emphasized than saving. His joke is that in his country, when you make money, you think, how do I save this? And Americans will think, well, how can I spend this? Obviously, this is a sweeping assumption, but this does kind of fit with the story. My husband makes decent money as an accountant, but we are definitely not wealthy at all. My husband does DoorDash to help make ends meet. He's incredible with money, and I'm so grateful to him for his patience and keeping me grounded through all of this. Now, my mom has continuously asked me for money, and I have none. I'm living on student loans, but have graciously given her money, or just bought her some groceries. My mom always says that she can't wait until I'm a rich dentist that can help fund her life. My husband is fed up with her behavior, and honestly, so am I. And I finally got the courage to say no when she asked me for money. I just honestly don't know how it's going to be once I'm a dentist. I'll make decent money, but will have to live like a pauper for the first 10 years due to my high student loans. But my mom doesn't see it this way. She Googles the average salary of a dentist and thinks that I'm going to be swimming in money. She constantly says that she can't wait until I'm making good money. I'm just scared that she will see me as an ATM because having a kid is expensive, and I'd like to have at least some semblance of a chance at being a homeowner one day. Anyone that's been through something similar, how do you lay down the law? I am genuinely scared for when I start to make money. I mean, my mom is starting to sell her stuff, like her hair dryers and even her hearing aids. It makes me feel so angry and upset that she stopped working for a few years and hemorrhaged all that money with no backup plan. What should I do? Honestly, I think you just need to stick to your values and say, no, I'm not going to give you any money. Because here's the thing, it really seems like your mom is not going to get better about spending money. Like, she blew through $400,000 since 2014. Like, I don't know about you, but personally, if I had that much money in my savings account and I had that as a backup fund in some kind of way, I would have been way more careful about my money than the way your mom acted. She basically treated her bank account like an endless pit of money, and then finally, once present day runs around, she has nothing to account for, and she's still asking you for money. So it sounds like there's a spending problem that she needs to figure out on her own. So in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would not give her any more money. I would tell her that unfortunately she's gonna have to get a job, or she's gonna have to find some other way for assistance, because her spending habits are a massive red flag. And if you don't put your foot down now, I can guarantee you she will keep asking for the rest of your life. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay $20 for my office Christmas party that I'm not even able to attend? Here's what happened. So my office throws a Christmas party every single year, and attendees are encouraged to toss $20 to the event planning team because they don't get funds for events like this. Now, usually I do go, it's not a bad time, and there's usually Chick-fil-A as well as some raffles. But this year, however, I cannot go because I'm headed out of town that day, and I was planning to get on the road around the time that the party's gonna start. Now, this is not a secret. I planned my PTO before the party was even announced, and I told the event team that I won't be around. I mean, I didn't even wait until the last minute to tell people. Well, now they're shaming me for not paying $20 for an event that I'm not even going to be there for. They're saying that it supports the whole office and saying that some people can't pay the $20, so I'm just being greedy. Now, obviously, I'm not going to lose my job over this, but it feels pretty awful to shame someone for not wanting to pay for an office party they won't even be in town for. So honestly, am I the jerk for refusing to pay $20 for an office party that I'm not even going to be at? Because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. No, of course not. You are definitely not the jerk. Your coworkers are being selfish, and seriously, that's where this conversation begins and ends. And it's not like they don't know you're going out of town. Like, you literally made it clear to these people you're not going to be there, and you have other plans going on. So the fact that they would shame you for still not coughing up $20 just so they can fund their stupid party, in my opinion, is insane. Like, seriously, it's probably not going to be that good of a Christmas party if your $20 is going to make or break this thing in the first place. So if I was in your shoes, I would ignore these people and just keep on going about my day, because they are clearly acting very selfish as well as completely unreasonable. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.